Can I get a mic check from the fifth floor conference room, please?
Testing one, testing two.
Thanks so much. We are live on YouTube. YouTube TV will be starting in just a moment. We're live on UGTV.
All right. Welcome to the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to announce that some committee members, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of this meeting. The public may also indicate their intent to provide remote public comment by contacting the clerk's office by 5 p.m. the Thursday before the meeting. The public also will have an opportunity to provide brief comments either by telephone or via Zoom from the 5th floor conference room, Suite 512 of the Municipal Office Building. I will now call this meeting of the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Her place. Roll call. Groneman.
Present.
Kane. McKiernan.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Markley.
Here. Thank you. There are two revisions to tonight's agenda: removal of items number 1 and item number 2, authorizing survey and description of lands to be condemned. We will move items 7 and 8 into those position numbers 1 and 2 on the agenda. That's the sidewalk item and the stormwater item. So 7 and 8 are becoming items 1 and 2 tonight for scheduling purposes. Our first order of business is the approval of minutes from our January 24th meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman.
Aye.
Kane. McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you. All right. So first on our committee agenda, got to scroll down here, is item number 7. You're tracking us. Discussion, sidewalk and curb incentive program. And Mr. Troy Shaw is going to be discussing that item, I believe.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. So this is Troy Shaw, I'm the county engineer. This is our curb and sidewalk incentive policy, which we brought to commission, I think late 19, and updated it. We kind of had an informal policy before that. So we formalized it pretty much after we did that. We haven't used it because COVID happened and this program wasn't in the budget for 2 years. It's back in the budget now. So one thing we've found with the policy, it's a little unclear as to who all qualifies for the policy. It was written in general for residential properties. There's a couple things, and I'll kind of tell you how we've been operating in the past before we had this policy. And really what I'm looking for is just guidance on how we clarify this policy and get what we want out of it. And we can make the edits so that it reflects that moving forward. Right now it's written for residential properties to do a 50-50 split for sidewalk replacement or curb replacement with the unified government. We fund until July 1st of every year. We fund equally in every commission district. After July 1st, if there's more interest in another district and we have people in waiting, we'll let them hop in there. And then after September 1st, the policy says the funds may be used first come, first served basis for sidewalk removal and replacement of properties adjacent to UG's facilities, parks, or schools. So one of the questions that have come up that in the past we used to operate with nonprofit, charitable organizations qualified as well. So roughly 501c3 properties we used to allow to do it too. That's not specifically written in the policy. So we had a question about that. It came up. Our right-of-way manager's response, because he's newer since we previously did it, said, well, it's not in the policy, so I can't do that. So the question is, historically, we did that. We offered it after September 1st to those organizations as well. Do we want to include that going forward? If we do, I can make a change to the policy, clearly identify that, and then it'll help going forward. So that's really all I had on this. If you have any more questions, be glad to answer them, but that's really what we're looking for, just direction on how to clarify this. Should we add those charitable organizations to this as well to be able to use this program?
Members of the committee, questions, comments, or offer your opinion on the question before us? Go ahead, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Thank you, Troy, for coming to us with this. Still thinking and debating in my head what to do, but I did have a couple questions just so for community members out there who knows, and just so for information purposes. Before COVID, how many residents would you say applied for this program?
I can't tell you the number, but we did usually spend the full budget every year, which is roughly 125,000. Sometimes they're bigger. Whole neighborhoods do it together, so I don't know the exact number, but we did end up spending about 125,000 a year on the program.
Okay, and I had another question, but I lost it.
Anyone else want to go? Commissioner
Yeah,
Ramirez thinks about it again. It'll come back to you. Commissioner McKiernan?
Thank you. Well, Troy, you and I have definitely talked about this. So how interesting that I'm here tonight.
Yeah, it worked out well.
Yeah, complete coincidence. So my first thought, as you and I talked, was a sidewalk is a sidewalk is a sidewalk. And I didn't understand how we were staggering. I mean, I understand the commission split up until July and then consolidating that all, but I didn't understand the holding everything but residential until September. And so I just throw out, for the purpose of consideration, a sidewalk is a sidewalk is a sidewalk. And you could argue that a commercial property or a not-for-profit might have a greater capacity to raise the private match than would an individual homeowner. But it would seem to me that there are hurdles, different hurdles, but still potential financing hurdles for not-for-profits and for businesses as well. So I'd ask us to be open-minded to making this all applications from the beginning, again, with the district specific up to July 1 and then consolidating everything after that. I certainly would advocate that we increase the funding for it. I know that ultimately circles back around to me, but I'd advocate that if we spent all that we had allocated in the years before COVID, that we might be able to spend more than that now. And especially because this doubles our money by requiring, well, it almost doubles our money depending on whether it's one or several continuous properties. And does this now, it used to just be sidewalk replacement, but we are now covering curb replacement as well?
Correct. We've added curb into it when we redid the policy in 19.
And can curbs be done as standalone projects, or does it have to be in conjunction with the adjoining sidewalk?
They can be standalone.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Which is amazing because some of our neighborhoods only have curbs. So this gives them an opportunity to get their curb replaced if they don't have a sidewalk. Commissioner Kane?
I say since we were doing it in the past, we might as well continue to do it. And Commissioner McCarron's right. We should probably up the ante on this a significant amount so we can get more done.
Sorry. I would say if we are going to allow commercial properties such as, I'm just thinking, obviously this is out of the box, but Walmart could apply if we're allowing commercial properties. And if we're going to allow commercial properties, we certainly, I would say, increase the budget because if I owned a commercial business, I would certainly take advantage of it.
I don't know about that commercial stuff. Harold's got a question.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. So did you say that the entire budget was 125,000?
Correct.
How many square feet can you get for 125,000?
I'm not going to do the math in my head, but right now the cost of sidewalks is about 12 square feet per removal in place of the sidewalk. So
Say that again.
about 12 square feet or $12 a square foot for removal and replacement of sidewalk, and curbs about $48 a foot roughly.
So we're not getting a whole lot of bang for our buck out of this.
So that's the total price. So when public, so half of that would be, so,
Yeah.
but you're right. Yeah, their infrastructure is expensive. So
Yeah. And it's only getting more expensive per year.
Mhm.
So I'm probably leaning into the increasing the budget for sure. But, and especially if we're going to do commercial along with residential. Gosh. Thank you.
I got Commissioner McKiernan, and then we'll do Commissioner.
So Troy, I definitely appreciate, I think you're worried that if we opened it up to commercial from the very beginning, that one large commercial project could bankrupt or take the entirety of our funding for a year before anybody else got an opportunity to do it.
correct. That would be my thought that might happen.
All right. Well, that's what it is now. Commercial is basically held until,
No, commercial, we've never allowed commercial. We've allowed nonprofits in the past.
nonprofits. Then, yeah, commercial after September might be something to consider, giving all the residential and not-for-profits an opportunity to get into the program early. And then if they don't expend all the funds, then it would be open for commercial projects after that. That's something to think about. Thank you.
Commissioner Kane?
I would hate to give somebody like Walmart or something, we've already given them a tax abatement to give them any of this money. You know, so I don't believe that would fit. And if I was the guy that wanted a deal next year, maybe we hold the money over till next year if we have some left over. But I sure don't want to give the place that we're already given a significant tax break the opportunity to dig in is a little more and take it away from the people that live here.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. I completely agree with Commissioner Kane. It's commercial properties more so, the example we're using is Walmart. They have the funds, they have the ability to put in the money for a sidewalk. Whereas next door homeowner might not. So they have to have multiple homeowners band together to do just a part of a sidewalk. So I think we keep the current policy, but allow the 501c3s into it from the beginning, just as homeowners, because that they can create partnerships within each other to redo sidewalks. But I think commercial, they have the ability, the wherewithal to do that. If they want to redo their sidewalk, they have the funds to, or the capability in some way, shape, or form to do financing. So I am of the mind that we leave it with just residential, but adding 501c3 from the beginning as well.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd add, though, just for the sake of conversation, there's a big difference from a Walmart to a local not a small for-profit business, a mom and pop, startup, maybe even one that's been here for a while, a restaurant that's local. That's a big difference. And so I don't know that you can kind of categorize the size of business when you do that, but at least it is something that we should be conscious of as we're making the decision one way or the other.
Commissioner Johnson, I knew that that's what you were going to say. That's exactly where I was going. Is that I agree with the concerns about larger businesses, but then I worry that we're not offering a benefit to these really small sort of John and Jenny own the sandwich shop in the corner sort of businesses who probably don't have the financial means of replacing their own sidewalk and who would certainly benefit from this program. But legal, I'm guessing there are concerns with trying to make that distinguish between different types of businesses. I don't know if you have any thoughts on whether there's a way for us to make a cutoff at size or profit or something like that, or whether it needs to be all one side or all the other. She's like,
I might
thanks a lot.
defer to Chief Counsel.
Misty Brown, Chief Counsel. Yes, Commissioner, I think there are concerns about how one would do it equitably. So if this is something that the commission would like us to look at, I'd want to dive into it a bit more to make sure we were doing something that is defensible when we're starting to look at commercial properties.
Is there interest from the committee in hearing more about that? I mean, I even wonder if we could do it by like census tracts where there are businesses in certain lower income census tracts that would be eligible, but a business in another census tract might not be. It's up to the committee. If the committee would like to hear some more information at a future meeting, we could ask for this to come back with a little more information.
They'll count me in.
If you like to, so for clarification on my part, we can do that and come back to a future meeting to talk more about the commercial side of it. Would you still like me to update the policy to include the 50C3?
I think so. I
Okay,
think that was a consensus.
okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
All right. Any more questions, comments from the commission? Were there any questions or comments from the public clerk?
Commissioner, none were received.
All right. This was an information only item, so we will move along to item number 8, which is our stormwater credits and appeals presentation to present the findings and an overview of our stormwater credits and appeals concept. And I think Troy is going to take that one as well.
Yes, fortunately, Jeff has given me the honor to kick off the stormwater presentation that we're all very familiar with at this point. So last time we were here, I think a couple months ago, we were given direction to kind of move forward, getting the stormwater rates into the budget for the future, looking at how that works out. And also look at a couple things, the credit program, which we gave you a draft of, I believe, as well as looking at an alternate rate for nonprofit companies or nonprofits. So we've kind of prepared that in this presentation. We'll go through it real quick. We think we only have like 18 slides, try to get through as fast as possible so we can have a discussion. I guess I got the, so these are the rates that we've shown you before. This is nothing new. One thing I'll note, in 21, that's what our fees were. You guys updated them in 22 so that our fund is solvent. If you look at 23, this is what we showed before. To provide the services that we've shown in the past, the fund is insolvent as of next year again. So just a real quick background of that. And then same slide you've seen before, it just shows the individually calculated rates going forward with what we've talked about in the past. And this includes the credit program that you see in the draft. It's just an estimated percentage that we've said get the credit based on experience and what other cities have seen. That's how these rates were calculated. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Schaefer, one of our senior engineers, to talk about the actual credit program and highlight that real quick.
All right, next slide. So as Troy mentioned, the credit program that we're going to go over is included in the rate structure that you have been reviewing to date. So our credit program, we have quality credits, quantity credits, and discharge credits. We have those credits in 2 levels, a level 1 and a level 2. They are at a specific percentage based upon technical criteria that are met within there. So each one of them has a minimum and a maximum. And in order to achieve a level 2 option, you have to achieve the level 1 minimum criteria. We have a ratio credit, and this is a total parcel area to impervious area ratio. So if you think of a very, very large property of pervious space, and a very small percentage of that is going to be where that roof, that concrete, potentially that gravel driveway is. So if there's a very large parcel with a very small amount of impervious space, they may meet the ratio credit for up to a 50% credit. The appeals examples are parcel ownership, impervious area, and distribution of billable SWUs, so stormwater units on their bill. So parcel ownership, we have incorrectly assigned the billing. So we have to update that accordingly to get the bill out to the right person. Impervious area is correcting an impervious area calculation. So maybe we've over calculated something and they want us to correct that, or correcting a material surface. So if we've indicated that that is impervious area and they come back and say, actually it's impervious or it's a gravel, so they are able to get a different rate on that particular square footage. Distribution of billables. So this is a property with multiple leases or ownership with BPU bills. So this could be a strip mall or a large apartment complex or small apartment complex. Ultimately, multiple people on that same property that would take ownership of that particular bill. So if you take a look at these particular credit programs, and again, these are just the highlights that we provided in that manual. You have your Q credit, which has a maximum of 50%, a ratio credit with a maximum of 50%, and a direct discharge, which has a maximum of 75%. You are only eligible to get one of these particular credits. They cannot exceed, well, you can get multiple aggregates, but you can only receive up to that 50% maximum. So if you have the direct discharge, you're not able to necessarily also obtain additional opportunity with your Q credits or your ratio credits. So one other question that was brought to staff was, what about a different rate? So for our not-for-profit organizations. And so we have Anna White with us today to discuss the opportunities with a discount program.
All right, thank you. All right, so we've put together an analysis just to kind of highlight what a discount program could look like for the UG. So based on the land use codes that are available in the county's tax assessor's office data, we were able to identify a group of parcels made up of the categories we are showing there: churches, places of worship, charitable institutions, religious living quarters, and religious administration headquarters. So just that small group of parcels that we identified there makes up a total of 360 parcels. And that's what we use for our example. There are, though, over 6,000 parcels that are considered tax exempt from the tax assessor's office. But again, we just took a small sample of nonprofit organizations just to get an idea of how the discount program could work and how it would impact your rates. So we've assumed that the discount would be a 20% reduction of actual impervious area. I know it's been worded as a different rate or discount rate. Ultimately, this is a reduced rate, but we're taking it as a reduction of actual impervious area. So just based on these 360 parcels and the amount of impervious area that we have for all 360 of those, if we reduced it by 20%, that would be a revenue of $32,300 loss from that discount. So an example of how that discount could impact some typical bills. So these are 4 parcels here that would qualify under those categories that I shown on the previous slide that we were looking at. So you can see that it kind of ranges from anywhere from about $50 a year to about $300 a year, depending on the amount of impervious area. And so what we're doing in this calculation is just reducing the impervious area, the stormwater units, and then applying the same rates to that reduced impervious area to get the reduced monthly fee. So these are the rates that we have seen with the discount program. Okay, so sorry. So if we did implement what I just proposed, a 20% discount just for those 360 parcels, and if 100% of those all applied and were granted the discount, these would be the revised rates. And I'll show you on the next slide here. It's a little easier to compare them to the rates that Sarah just showed that does not include the discount. So the monthly base charge does not change. What does change the rate for 500 square feet, and it goes up 2 cents. And so you can see if you look at the bill examples shown on there, the impact ranges from an increase of 60 cents per year up to $240 per year, just based on the values that we're showing there. So Black & Veatch conducts a stormwater survey every 3 years. We have about 75 utilities that participate in our survey, and we ask over 50 questions to each of those participants. One of the topics that we do ask in our survey is whether the utility offers any kind of customer assistance, such as discounts, as part of their rate structure. And so these two questions here are the questions that we ask with regards to discounts. So you can see that the majority of the respondents, or 68%, indicate that they do not offer any kind of assistance or discounts. But if you look at the discounts that are offered, about 13% either have an elderly or senior citizen discount or some other type. About 8% have a low income discount, 5% are disabled. And then there's 3% that offer either an educational institution discount or a faith-based institution discount. And so again, the example that we ran was looking at the faith-based discount. The other thing I want to point out, the question that we ask is how that discount, how that revenue that's lost from the discount is funded through the utility, and 69% recover it through the stormwater rates and charges. So exactly what we had assumed for our assumption for the example that we ran is that the proposed stormwater rates would increase in order to make up that difference in lost revenue. And then I just want to show you some example programs, other communities that do have a discount program. So the closest one to us is Olathe, Kansas. So Olathe does have a discount for parcels that do qualify as a 501c3 entity. Now, Olathe's stormwater rate structure is very different from the UG. It's based on gross area, basically lot size, not impervious area. It's tiered for all customers. And then there's a cap on the amount of impervious area, or the amount of that top tier. So I think right now it's capped at maybe 750,000 square feet. And every couple of years they update that cap. So what the discount program is for Olathe is that if you qualify, the cap that's in place the year that you qualify is the cap. It's never increased for those entities. So that's very different than what we're talking about here. Some other examples, though, that are a little more related to what we're discussing. Miami Gardens, Florida, they have an impervious area-based fee. The rate structure is a flat fee for residential and individually calculated for non-residential. So they have a 50% discount off the monthly charge for houses of worship, very similar to what we're talking about here. Bremerton, Washington, also impervious area-based fee, the same rate structure, flat for residential, individually calculated for non-residential. So public school district properties get a discount on the monthly charge in that community. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, also impervious area based, the same rate structure as the others, a flat fee for residential, individually calculated for non-residential. Their discount was passed over 20 years ago by the city council. So it's been in place for a long time. So it's a 25% discount on the monthly charge for charitable institutions, hospitals, and education institutions as well. One other one that I want to point out is Ferguson, Pennsylvania. It's just a little bit different. An exemption is given if the stormwater fee is greater than 1% of that organization's revenue. So it's based a little bit different than what we've been talking about in our example. Instead of a discount off of impervious area for anyone who qualifies as a nonprofit, it's only if your revenue, if your bill is a certain percentage of the revenue. So that's something to think about as an example. Okay, I'm going to turn it over now to Misty to talk about the legal context.
Misty Brown, Chief Counsel. So this will be, I know, thankfully pretty quick for the commission when we're talking about the legality of this. Luckily, you know, when we first started with our stormwater utility back in like 08 or 09, it was still somewhat new, but its law has now been safely established in it. The best practices going forward and defensibility when looking at the stormwater utilities is you have an equitable structure. The most equitable one, the most highly favored, I guess, in the law would be your individually calculated. That said, you can see from the examples, there are many different ways to structure it, such as, you know, a flat residential versus individually calculated for the commercial and various other tiered approaches. Next, when you're looking at legality of it, is it a sustainable fund? You know, does it actually fund the utility in its entirety? And simplicity, is it understandable? Can everybody look at it and understand it? I see others getting in trouble when they get too articulate with way too many exceptions here and there. The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is we have talked tonight about a credit versus a discount, and they are distinct. I think the commission generally gets this, but for those watching, a credit runs with the property because this is something that's being done that actually helps the utility and maybe increasing the quality of the runoff or decreasing the quantity of the runoff, whereas a discount is with the owner. So if you have a property getting a discount that is an example given, a place of worship and ownership changes, then that discount would not necessarily stay with the property where the credit is. And so that is the end of my legal analysis of this. I promise to be quick.
Sarah Schaefer is going to give a quick overview of the application and the process to get the credits.
So one thing to note is with a credit and or discount program is that they do not automatically get put into the bill. In order to receive a credit and or discount, the property owner must apply for that particular credit or discount. So, and then demonstrate how they meet those credits or discounts. So with a level 1 credit, they must demonstrate that they meet the guidelines and the design standards in order to state they are meeting the current requirements of that particular property. Level 2 credits, similarly, they must demonstrate that they meet those design criteria that is required. So we state that in order to receive a credit, you must meet the existing design criteria. And so they have to demonstrate those for both level 1 and level 2. Not-for-profit discounts would also must provide documentation demonstrating that particular status in order to receive that particular discount. So approved credits and or discounts would then be recertified every 2 years. So currently we have a BMP certification program that occurs every 2 years, and this would roll right into that particular policy to support those particular level 1, level 2 credits and be administered easily.
So skipped one slide. We'll get back to it in a second. So this is basically the wrap up slide that we're looking to the commission for guidance. Just your thoughts on the credits and discount, what we've proposed so far. As we talk about an appeals group that Sarah just got done mentioning, how should that be made up? How many people on it? Should there be 3? Should there be more? Who should be on that group? The directors of departments within the UG. How often should this group meet? We've seen many examples throughout the city. I just threw some notes on there. But we also asked this question to the chamber as well. So here's the chamber's thoughts on those 3 questions about the appeals process. So I just throw that out there so you guys can see what it is. And then we're here to answer any questions and looking for your feedback and thoughts as we move forward with this.
Commissioner Kane, and then we'll do Ramirez.
I say I'm an individual, 85 years old, and I think I've got a situation, but I can't explain it to you, but I think I got it, that I ought to qualify for a discount. How does a senior citizen know what's going on?
I think
And don't say go on the internet. I don't want to hear that anymore.
I think they would. My guess is just because it happens, they would call someone in the public works department, and we would walk them through and help them understand what's going on. That would be my thought as to how that would.
When you say walk them through, what do you mean?
So what we anticipate is that you would get a bill notification of what your bill for your property would be, because then it's broken up into 12 months. You know, you're paying every month on this particular bill. So you get your notification, and similarly to your property estimates, you have information on how to appeal, ask questions, how to call, what are the discounts eligible. So it'd be similar to property valuation.
No, I don't like that process either. I mean, we have a multiple amount of seniors that might be able to qualify that, but don't understand the process. And when you say you talk to them over the phone, or would you physically go out there?
We would start over the phone, but if they would like to go out and talk about, we have gravel. I think I have gravel. Will you come look?
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll send someone out there to take a look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. I think overall, I'm in agreement with the credit program. But with the discount, I think kind of goes back to the previous item of the legality of keeping certain entities out. So we're talking about the sidewalk, and well, we can't leave all commercial properties out. There's a legality to it. And so with the discount, that's what also I'm just interested in, Misty, on your thoughts on that. If we just do just faith-based organizations, or we do just educational institutions, where's the legality for that, for that discount program? If let's just say it's just faith-based, and not picking on you, Commissioner Johnson. But if it's a faith-based organization where, let's say, a nonprofit or a school district comes to us but doesn't believe that's fair, that is just one type of organization. So in your thoughts, your legal analysis, what do you think is the legality of that?
Well, I think it is a good question that when it came up, I struggled with it a little bit because it does open up questions that we were going to have to deal with and make policy decisions around. Now we know that we've seen other communities, even Olathe, have made some of these decisions. When I was talking about the defensibility of it, when we have a program that is simple to understand, it sustains itself, and it's individually calculated, we know that's pretty good. When we start going into making exceptions, what I don't recommend is saying certain type, you wouldn't want to say, well, businesses that are this size could get it, but not this size. And if you're going to go with categorical that all faith-based institutions can do that, we know that that's been done and it's been defended. But then the commission is going to have to address the questions that are going to come about, well, what about nonprofits? What about educational facilities? What about hospitals? So if we get the guidance that the commission would like to make these policy decisions to do something for faith-based versus educational versus 501c3, we just need to make sure that we are being inclusive of all, like if we're going to go with faith-based, all faith-based institutions, we're not trying to monitor what type of faith-based institution it is, then that's what we need to be inclusive for that category. But as the slide showed, not a lot of places do the discounts. A lot of them tend to go more with the credit. So we can do it. We just have to be careful about how we do it and understand that it will cause some policy discussion amongst the commission, because everybody is going to want, to have a part of that.
If I could just add one thing to that, one thing to consider is maybe that the discount program is not permanent, but just temporary for maybe a 3-year period in order to allow those businesses that you select, if it's just the faith-based organizations or the nonprofit organizations, time to adjust, to get used to paying a higher monthly stormwater bill. And then after that period of, if it's 3 years, it's then phased out.
Thank you. Like I said, I am all for the credit program, but I think the discount program idea or initiative is more, we should have that discussion as a full commission, not just with the 5 of us. Because as of right now, I don't feel comfortable making any type of decision or providing any guidance on that at the moment. Because there's 5 other commissioners who are part of this, who will be part of this conversation, and I want to hear their thoughts on it before I make any decision. Pertaining to the appeals portion, I have done my fair share of research around the country of how other municipalities and other jurisdictions do their appeals process for their stormwater. I am kind of the mind of, yes, having an appointed board, but having it as like another board or commission that the commission appoints residents, ratepayers themselves on to be the board of appeals. And it's nothing against staff, but I think it's the people who will be appointed to these will be more open to listening and knowing what the other ratepayer is going through. And I cannot think at the moment of what I did. I researched many different jurisdictions, but that's my opinion. That's my belief that if we are going to do an appeals board, I believe that it should be under another board and commission, that the commission and the mayor appoint someone on there. The chamber is open to have a seat on that if that's what we as a commission so choose. But I think the main board should be ratepayers themselves. Thank you.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you. I'm definitely open to the idea of a discount or a credit or whatever it might be. I'm open to that idea. I think that we should, first of all, because I'm pinch hitting tonight, I didn't get a copy of the presentation that was up on the screen here. I just have the red line copy that's in the agenda. So if somebody could send this to me, that would be wonderful.
We'll send it to you.
Beautiful. Thank you. I would like us to be in line with the majority. If we choose to do something like this, I think we should be in line with the majority of our peers who are already doing something. We do not want to be an outlier. Rather, we want to be similar to any other jurisdiction that's already doing this. On the issue of a board or a panel or a review committee, I appreciate what Commissioner Ramirez has said here, but I think our ultimate goal would be that we have a structure, we have a set of rules that can be applied without the need for having a review panel. That maybe that review panel is necessary for the purpose of constituting the framework of the discount program or the credit program, whatever it might be. But there's no need for routine review of individual properties. That's just the thoughts that are going through my mind at this point. I understand the appeal. I would still, this is pie in the sky, I get it. But I would still hope that we could have a set of guidelines that can be applied and are applied. And if you meet those guidelines, that's it. We're done. Thanks.
Yeah, I do have concerns about appointing residents just because it really is based on an analysis of the property. And my concern would be we might not get consistent results if the board is made up of people who are not experts at making that analysis. I wouldn't mind there being some mixture where we have some staff members who are able to make that technical analysis and some residents who are able to provide that additional perspective. But I think ultimately the goal is for it to be fairly applied. And if it's simply a matter of this percentage of your property is impervious and this percentage is not, and we're presenting that to a group of people who don't necessarily have that expertise in analyzing what's impervious and what's not, I'm not sure we get a consistent result from resident to resident, which can be really alarming for a resident if somebody was before the board last week and got one ruling, and then a different resident comes forward and gets a different one when it appears to be the same set of facts. So those are my thoughts. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. That's a very interesting conversation. And so while we're on that discussion, it is lost on me as to how the appeals process goes for landowners that are appealing their taxes. Can anyone in this room speak to that process? Is it done through a department, through staff, or I know it's done through a department staff. But But who makes that decision as to whether or not to grant an appeal on their taxes? Staff? Oh boy, I must have really put something out there.
Commissioner Misty Brown, Chief Counsel, I am going to butcher this a bit in that I have never appealed my taxes on it. But I believe what one does is they fill out the appeals form. I believe what happens next is they have like a hearing, like an informal hearing. Staff is there. I believe there's another person that comes that acts as for lack of a better word, the judge for that. And then if that is not successful, then I know they can go up to the Board of Tax Appeals and go up for different hierarchies on that. But I believe there's a residential and informal hearing locally that one has when they are appealing it. I'm going to clarify that and I'll get just some more finite information on it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the only reason why I asked the question is if we're using that model already, why couldn't that be applied to the discussion that we're having right now? And so I don't know whether it's feasible. I don't know anything in terms of how to answer that. But if you could provide that, maybe it's something we could consider later on. As I continue to think about this, my initial, I'm going to just kind of go through my thought process, which is a dangerous thing. I'll just give you that caveat up front. My first thought would have been to allow a discount / credit on all nonprofit entities. But as we began to look at the numbers on the slide, that would probably not be equitable for us as the municipality. So then if we just look at the 360 eligible religious institutions, and you began to apply that credit or discount in terms of dollars, $32,000, is that on an annual basis or is that on a monthly basis?
That was annual.
Okay, so if that is annual, that doesn't make me pause at all. It makes me wonder, and not just because of my background, but it makes me wonder if maybe we could increase that number and I forget the actual percentages of the examples that you gave, but can you remind me of what those percentages are?
So it assumed a 20% discount on impervious area. Is that the assumption?
That's the question, and I'm saying the four different comparisons. What were the percentages for those comparative entities?
So I think, can you put them up on the screen? I think you're talking about the four parcel examples.
I'm talking about the four cities that you identified.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yes.
So Olathe was a little different in terms of it because it wasn't a percentage discount, but Miami Gardens was a 50% discount. Bremerton, we couldn't clarify what the discount was. We can look more into that. Pennsylvania was 25%.
Yeah, because I was thinking I would recommend something higher for a religious institution. But then if you look at these four examples, how do we compare that then to the tiered structure that you all are presenting to us? I mean, are these examples of cities, municipalities that have a tiered format, or that's just the way the policy reads? It's different than what we're proposing or what you all are proposing to us, I guess.
I guess it just so happens that all of these communities have the flat rate for residential and individually calculated for non-residential. That is the most common rate, stormwater rate structure.
Right.
So all the ones that we've identified here have that. We could also apply the discount program to the tiered rate structure as well. We didn't run that example to show you what the rates would look like under the tiered program, but we could do that.
Okay. I think I just happen to run upon that question, but I do think that would be a good bit of information for us to know. I'm going to pause and let Commissioner Kane go. I'm going to have some questions after he gets through, I'm sure.
I like the idea of a committee. I like the idea of having our constituents. I got one who's already volunteered. You know, because I think staff sometimes, you know, they get in their head that here's what the book says and here's the way we're supposed to do it. And it's good to have outside thoughts about how it affects other areas. So I would prefer that we have a committee, and I got a volunteer to run it.
Commissioner Johnson, you had additional questions? Well, I would just note while you're remembering, I think one item for us to balance is that the deeper the discount is just getting passed along to everyone else, right? Because we're still raising the same amount of money in the proposed plan. So the deeper the discount to the churches, the higher everybody else in the county's rate is. So we still have to think about striking that balance if we are considering deepening the discount to the churches.
Right. And I would say that just in conversation, had there not been any precedents out there, then I would be a little more cautious about extending any discounts. But for the fact that we have credible examples of others, that sets precedent for us, particularly from a legal standpoint. We know that there are other entities that are out there that have done this, and hopefully will be able to provide some sense to us as to how they deal with the questions that are inevitable from the public for other institutions. So I think that's all I have for right now. I'll relinquish my stance.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Kind of going to what you were talking about, Commissioner McCarron, and I completely understand and completely agree. But you could say the same analogy with our Board of Zoning Appeals. We really wouldn't need it if we had which our zoning code is written to what it says should a land use should be, then we shouldn't have it. Please correct me if I'm wrong in my thinking, is why should we have a Board of Zoning Appeals? And the people that we put on planning and zoning, not all of them are from planning and zoning. Not all of them have the knowledge and expertise. That's why they rely on staff to give the recommendation. They read through the staff reports, and then that's when they're able to make their decision. That could be the same for these Stormwater Appeals Board. Rely on staff to provide them the information. I'm guessing I would hope our planning and zoning appointees get some training before their first meeting. I would hope so. And I'm hoping that's what would happen with our stormwater, if that's what we would do. Those people have the proper training of understanding what the terminology and the everything. I just think I'm more for it because of just being open and transparent and giving our community another opportunity to be part of the process. That's my only thoughts and thinking.
Not convinced, open to it. Absolutely. The devil's always in the details. I understand the point you're trying to make, and I'm definitely open to continuing the conversation.
Well, I think if I can sum up the comments here tonight, it's that I don't hear anyone say no discount and no credit. So I think there's some level of consensus that a discount program, a credit program has support from this committee. It sounds like there are still some discussions to be had, possibly with the full commission, about the details of how that would function. But I think it's a step forward that there's some consensus, at least around the fact that we would like to head in that direction. Clerk, did we receive any comments from the public?
None were received.
Is there anyone from the public here in person who wishes to make comment? All right, this item was for information only, at least for tonight. Thank you very much. And that we are going to now jump back up to item number 3. I got to find it here on my sheet. All right, which is the amendments to the Safe and Welcoming Act to comply with B 2717. And Casey Meyer is going to present.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Casey Meyer, and I'm with the legal department. And as you know, the state legislature passed House Bill 2717. The governor signed that bill in April. And any sections of our Safe and Welcoming Act that conflict with the bill are void. So what I've provided are two different drafts. The first draft basically goes through and we removed any sections that conflicted with the bill. The second draft, and that is the draft I'm going to focus on, resolves the conflicts between the bill and our act, as well as addresses some of the comments that were raised during full commission. And I noticed as I was going through our materials, if you have paper, the highlights are just gray, but I think that if you got the yellow highlights, you can see them easier. So I'm going to go through each one just to make sure that we don't miss any. So we can go to the next slide. I don't have the clicker. Oh. Okay. So and we're calling this option B. And these are the additional optional amendments that were based on the previous full commission. So under section 18-162, we added, thank you, a definition of program administrator, which includes the possibility of the city administering the program. I know that was one concern brought up at full commission. It still obviously includes the ability for a third-party administrator to run the program as well. The next highlighted section is in section 18-165A2. And in that section, we, well, again, further reference program administrator and the ability to use a 501c3. The point is there, we're not limiting ourselves to a 501c3. We're opening it up to the city or city departments. The next section, 18-165A5, we added a term, an expiration term of 2 years. I understand that that was a concern. And also that a person must surrender the community ID card when the card expires or when the person no longer resides within the county. Something I need direction on is in the two lists that basically list the documentation required for proof of residency and proof of identification. In our original draft, we have basically a catch-all at the very end, which allows for any other documentation that the program administrator would deem acceptable. I need some direction on that from the commission on whether or not we need to be more specific or eliminate that option. Let's see, the next section, the highlighted section. I kind of reorganized this just to make it a little clearer, and I added a section B titled Implementation, Acceptance by City Departments and Acts Prohibited. And you'll notice it's not highlighted, but because of the House bill changes, the violation section also is changed to be consistent with the state statute. Section 18-165C, that highlighted section, that adds some cardholder responsibilities. It would require the cardholder notify the program administrator within 30 days of any change of name or change of address within the city. And that would require them to obtain a new card. And also the ability for the program administrator to suspend or revoke someone's possession of a community ID card if they violate any of the rules or regulations under the Act. And then last, we added the option for an annual report and audit. And section D1 would require that the program administrator submit a report to the mayor and the Unified Government Board of Commissioners annually, or at the request of the mayor, Board of Commissioners, or county administrator. And also that the unified government may conduct audits of the program administrator, whether it be a 501c3 or a city department, to determine if they're complying with application requirements. Okay. And then last, I just wanted to reference this slide. This slide was presented, I believe, when Ken Moore covered this at a special session in 2020 during the pandemic. And the staff had done research on the costs of a city or of other cities that ran this program themselves. And the year one estimated cost was anywhere between 180,000. Okay, anywhere between 180,000 or 250,000. That was primarily related to staff costs and personnel. But I just wanted to bring that up again. So we need direction on what you want to do. First option is just the required repeals that make this comply with the House bill. The second option is the draft that incorporates, of course, the required repeals along with some optional changes or amendments that address some of the concerns that were raised at full commission.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Thank you, Casey and Misty, for working on this and try and ensure that our laws are within compliance within HB 2717. I support option B, but and I know Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Markley, who we three of us helped try to get safe and welcoming through, they know my hesitation of using the program administrator definition that is in the second option. Because from what I remember from a consensus from my fellow commissioners was to not have the city operate it because of the cost that it could, annual cost that it would be behind of operating it. And that's why we settled with just having an outside 501c3 operate it. Because I know all of the other changes were pertaining to the other issues that other commissioners had. I thank you for that, for listening to them and trying to incorporate that into the second draft or into the second option B. But I'm going to wait to hear what my other fellow commissioners have to say. But I don't like opening the door for a city department to operate it, because then that comes back to us of finding where in the budget. We just talked about wanting to increase the budget for sidewalk and curb replacement. Now we're going to maybe have to find budget where we have to operate a city ID. So I think that should stay with the 501c3 that is outside of unified government. I'll stop there, and I want to hear thoughts and comments of my other commissioners on the committee.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. I mean, when we had our initial conversation, Commissioner Ramirez, that was my time to kind of muddle through it and try to figure out whether I like, which one I like, if I like either one of them. But I would agree with you. And so I think I'll just leave it right there that the first item that speaks to whether or not, we should do it with a 501c versus it being handled in-house. I think we were pretty strong in terms of not wanting that to be held inside the UG or to be directed through the UG, and particularly from cost. I think there might have also been some opinion from the public that it would be, some people have a hard time dealing with City Hall and might feel better in dealing with the nonprofit 501c3. So I'll leave it right there. That's the only part. The rest of it, I'm good with. I don't have a problem with it.
Other comments from the commission? Well, I was going to say, I mean, I agree that I think the intent was for it to be handled by a third party administrator outside the unified government, and that seemed to be a commission consensus. I'm curious what happens if we put it out for RFP and we don't get a third party administrator that we have interest in contracting with. And I'm wondering if that might have been part of what was in legal's mind when they define it this way, but it's a possibility that I don't know. It's not a common enough service where there are just hundreds of people out there ready to apply through our RFP. So I do wonder what would be the situation. My thought is maybe it could be edited to just say who may be a contracted third-party administrator, which still leaves the option that they may not be, but doesn't specifically say it could be a city department. But I do have a concern that if we don't get an acceptable party who applies to the RFP, then what does that look like? And how do we move forward would be my only concern. Commissioner Kane?
Could you put the two of them back up, please? No. Right there. Do both of those follow the intent that was given to us by the state? Okay.
I thought I had my thing on. Commissioner Ramirez?
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. I hear your concern. I do. That was also a thought in my mind of if we just leave it to a third party, what if no one comes when we submit the RFP and make it public? So then I know after this part of this item is going to have public comment. And so my question to the coalition, I know who's listening and watching, can you provide us names of a outside 501c3 who'd be willing to be the program administrator? Because in my mind, if you can provide us some names of organizations that'd be willing to apply to the RFP, then I would be more comfortable just allowing the third party administrator, just a 501c3 to administer the program. So when we get to the public comment, I would like a member of the coalition to speak to that.
Commissioner McKiernan?
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Once again, as a pinch hitter, I'm catching up a little bit here. You reference an option A in the PowerPoint. Is that the first red line strikeout that's in the agenda packet? And then is option B the second red line strikeout that also has some yellow highlighter in it?
That's correct.
Okay. And do we have any Cliff Notes version of the similarities and differences between option A and B? Because you say option A is fully compliant or with, it says, resolves conflict between HB 2717 and Safe and Welcoming Act.
Right.
But how's
So
that?
option B is identical to option A, but has the additional options of addressing the concerns that were raised at full commission.
All right. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
All right, commissioners, any other comments before we go to public comment? All right, clerk, did we receive any comments from the public?
Commissioner, none were received.
All right, is anyone from the public or on Zoom here who wishes to speak?
We have a Carla Morris.
Okay, they'll be given 3 minutes to make comment. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. Carla, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Oh, she's gone.
So
Okay.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi. I was waiting to be promoted as to be able to speak. So good evening, members of the committee. My name is Carla Juarez. I am the Executive Director of Advocates for Immigrant Rights and Reconciliation, and my organization is a member of the Safe and Welcoming Coalition. We all know why we're here, to speak on the Safe and Welcoming City Act. And quickly, Commissioner Ramirez, to answer your question, we do have ideas of like who can be the issuer of IDs as a 501c3 organization. But I believe in having these conversations, I believe that is outside of our scope because of procurement policies or something like that. Misty, if you want to comment on that, but let me just share quickly my public comment because I have limited time. Unfortunately, the biggest portion of the protection piece is going away because of HB 2717. It is through no fault of anybody here, really. And we at AIR, we know that this HB 2717 and the reason why Safe and Welcoming City Act has to be amended could make it potentially unsafe for our community members, meaning the protections piece going away, the largest, most important portions of it. If the unified government wishes to administer this program, not only will that be expensive, but personal information will unlikely be private and therefore deemed unsafe for community members to obtain an ID. I know as for my organization, AIR, we, if the unified government chooses to go that route.
We have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. If the unified government chooses to go that route, we will not promote the ID for community members. The reality of the situation is it took our community 5 years to pass such an amazing ordinance in collaboration with you all. And it is simply too fast to make a decision on either of these options, which meaning option A and B. To continue our democratic and respectful collaboration between government and community, I respectfully ask this committee to delay this vote until our community and the coalition discusses how we wish to move forward. Thank you for your time.
Clerk, who's next?
Judy Cancel.
Go ahead, Judy. You'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Okay, my name is Judy Ansell, and I am president of the Cross Border Network, which is also a member of the Safe and Welcoming Coalition. And I want to second what Carla said, and also state in response to Commissioner Ramirez's question that Faith Action, which I believe Commissioner McKiernan had conversations with, is a possible contractor, even though they are not local. So we know that they do this all over the country. So I don't think there's a real question of not somebody not applying, but you know, we'll leave it at that. I want to speak specifically to one, why we want this postponed, And I think you have time before the end of the month to actually do that, because frankly, the commissioner, the members of the Safe and Welcoming Coalition were extremely traumatized by what happened in the Kansas legislature. And we have not had a chance to meet. We're very discouraged after 5 years of work. We have not had a chance to meet. And so neither Carla nor I can speak for the coalition. However, I think we can in very good confidence say that would be absolutely opposed to the city administering any kind of ID program. Let me just give you an example. Say an undocumented immigrant gets an ID with their address on it, and that person currently has no ID. And say they get stopped by the police for whatever reason. Could be jaywalking, could be suspicion, could be driving without a license, could be a lot of things. By having that ID, they will then have divulged their address. And while it is not necessarily the practice of the Kansas City Police Department or the Sheriff's Department to inform on them to ICE.
You have 1 minute remaining.
It is not prohibited. And so therefore, if the city has that information, it's even worse. But we really do have doubts about whether or not this program will be very popular with our immigrant community, which is what we intended it for, because of House Bill 2717. That's why we need to meet and we need to decide whether or not we want to go ahead with this. And we should be able to do that within 10 days, I'd say. And give you a response. That's why we respectfully ask that you postpone any kind of vote on this until you've heard from the coalition, which was the major force in pushing forward this ordinance. Thank you.
Clerk, who's next?
I don't see anyone else.
All right. Anyone here in public who wants to speak on this item? All right. Team, this one is up for a vote. Should we choose to do so? I will entertain a motion, or if there are additional questions, Commissioner Johnson.
Just want to clarify, wow, I'm doing something wrong here. Oh, I had muted myself. I unmuted myself on Zoom. If we strike out the first item and leave it, or go back to the way that we had originally thought in terms of only allowing it to be administered by a 501 outside 501c3 with no reference to the city at all, we can approve that with that one item being stricken. Is that correct?
Right, so it'd be a motion to amend, so you're asking that on option B, which is the highlighted version, I remove the definition of program administrator, which in this version includes that a department of the city can do it. But if I remove that and you knew you were voting on option B with that chunk removed, then yes, you could make a motion and vote on that.
Could you make it specific, the program administrator specific to a 501c3?
I heard one option where it was program administrator who may be a contracted third party from, I believe, Commissioner Markley. And I also heard your suggestion who shall be a contracted third party administrator. I can make it either way.
Well, I'd like to, let me make sure I'm getting this correct before I make it.
Just for reference, in our original draft, we had written it as shall be a contracted 501c3.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's what I want.
Okay.
Now, if we approve that tonight to go to the full commission, how long will it take? When's the next full commission that we would have to vote on that? And the only reason I'm asking that question is because the coalition says they need about 10 days. And I'm wondering if the actual commission won't look at this until a time that exceeds 10 days. And we take out the information that they find troublesome. Could we just make that, could we just approve that tonight and then, as opposed to just, if you holding this in stasis, I guess, until the next
I see
planning committee meeting.
some staff members nodding as to the number of days. So if somebody wants to throw it out there.
No, Commissioner, this is Brett Deichler, interim assistant county administrator. I was going to answer that. The next full commission is on June 9th. And then there will be one with full and PZ on June the 30th. So that gives you a time frame for reference.
It does. Thank you.
There are comments from the, go ahead, Misty.
Misty Brown, Chief Counsel. So I would note in there, so you could make this amended motion to this motion tonight, Commissioner Johnson, to amend the definition of program administrator to match what was in the original version and send this to full commission for consideration on June 9th. At that point, you could defer it again if needed be for later in that month. In an ideal world, we would like to see the changes made so that we're completely compliant by July 1. And that appears like it would give the coalition some time to discuss at June 9th and keep it at least progressing past standing committee. If not, we'd be looking at June 27th for Public Works and Safety's next meeting.
I think I want to do that, what you just said, as my motion.
So you want to move to approve option B with the program administrator definition made back the way it was in the original, to move it ahead to the full commission. And then there's additional discussion about what would happen if we needed additional time.
So moved.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Groneman. Kane. McKiernan.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Groneman.
All right.
That aye.
All right. Thank you. And we will move along to item number 4, which is a grant for fiscal year 22 local law enforcement crime gun intelligence center integration initiative. And Laura Cromwell is here to present. Welcome. I'll let you introduce your team.
Yes, that's exactly who they are. All right. Good evening. I'm Laura Cromwell. I'm the fiscal officer for the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. And here with me tonight are Captain Kevin Fithian and Assistant Chief Major Nunez. We are seeking approval to apply for and accept the federal fiscal year 22 Law Enforcement Crime Gun Intelligence Center Integration Initiative Grant Award. This particular grant will be a competitive grant process with a maximum award amount equal to $700,000, which is what we'll be applying for. We will use this funding to build on our relationships and support systems already established with the ATF to create a crime gun intelligence center located at police headquarters. In doing so, we plan to implement a technology solution that will help enhance our ability to detect gunfire within our city. Furthermore, we plan to install additional pan tilt zoom or PTZ cameras and automated license plate reader or LPR cameras to assist us in our gun crime investigations. Lastly, we plan to utilize a portion of the funding to pay overtime to both task force officers and detectives in an effort to bolster and better track our prosecution efforts. If awarded, the grant project period will extend for 3 years and there's no match requirement from the UG.
Thank you. This is super exciting and deeply needed. So I am both in favor of applying and hopeful that we'll win it. Any other questions or comments? Clerk, anything from the public or anyone here who wants to speak? All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Groneman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. McKiernan.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. All right, on to item number 5, grant for fiscal year 22 COPS hiring program. Ms. Cromwell, you again.
Okay, yes. So the police department is also seeking approval to apply for funding through the fiscal year 22 COPS hiring program to fund 12 patrol officer positions for a 3-year period. This would increase our manpower strength from 369 officers to 331 officers, which is needed to help decrease violent crime in our neighborhoods. These positions will be used to establish impact squads at each of our patrol divisions in an effort to build community trust. The primary responsibility of the division's impact officers is to work proactively with community groups and members of the community to identify and solve problems that are related to crime and or disorder in order to improve the quality of life within the community. The impact squads will work closely with the district officers, community policing officers, narcotics and intelligence detectives, violent crime detectives, and the property crime detective units in an effort to plan and implement strategies to reduce criminal activity within the patrol division boundaries. In addition, impact squad officers will conduct follow-up patrol in areas of homicides, shootings, and robberies with hopes of developing new leads. These impact squad officers will be readily available to react to these new leads and assist detectives without delay. And these officers would be able to provide that immediate response that so many people are looking for following violent crime occurrences. And ultimately, our goal is to promote a greater sense of safety and security in our neighborhoods by increasing police visibility. And that's exactly what these impact squads would do. So the grant solicitation indicates that the federal share will only cover $125,000 per position for the period of the grant. And that would cover about 75% of the salaries for these officer positions over the 3-year period. And then the UG would be required to pay the remaining 25% of the salaries and all of the benefits. However, we will be requesting a full match waiver in order to cover these positions at 100%. The match waiver will be applied for within our grant application. And I wanted to note that we did apply for a full match waiver when we applied for the fiscal year 20 COPS grant award. And we were offered that full match waiver. So we're hopeful that we'd be offered one again with this application. But should we not receive that match waiver, we will be required to fund these positions over and above that 125% federal share per officer. Based on current projections provided by the budget office, we are estimating that the total cost to the UG for both salary and benefits could be as much as $173,000 per position over the 3-year period, which would equate to just under $2.1 million for the 12 patrol officer positions over the 3 years. Again, these estimates include both salary and benefits, and they are high estimates with regard to benefit options. Based on actual benefit selections, the UG portion would likely be less. For comparison, the total cost to fund these 12 positions for 3 years without COPS grant funding would be about $3.5 million. So essentially, with no match waiver, we'd save $1.5 million if awarded the grant and approved to implement these impact squads. And with a match waiver, we'd be provided $3.5 million in grant funding to implement these positions. And lastly, the only sustainability requirement under this grant program is we'd have to commit to funding these 12 patrol positions at 100% for 12 months following the conclusion of the 3-year grant project period.
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Johnson.
I guess that's a little bit different than the last grant request we just looked at. So,
Yeah, just a bit.
wow. But we would only be required to match up to 173,000 per year, or over the what I just says, or over the 3-year period.
Yeah, that'd be the total for the 3 years per officer.
173,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then that does not scare me as much as I was originally uncomfortable. Thank you.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thanks. So having a hard time following the numbers there. So I may ask you to repeat some of those numbers.
No problem.
But we're looking, if the UG were going to have to pay,
yep,
173,355 over the 3-year period. If I do my math right, that's about almost $58,000 per position
Mm-hmm.
per year.
Mm-hmm.
And that amounts to how much of the total funding? The 2 million
Mm-hmm.
amounts to how much of the total funding?
So it would cost $3.5 million to fund all 12 positions for 3 years. And so the UG would have to, if it all goes according to plan without a match waiver, the UG could have to pay as much as $2.1 million because the federal government is only going to cover $125,000 per position. So per those 12 positions, they would do $125,000 for each of the 12 positions.
So they're asking for more than 50% match for each of
Their
the positions.
focus is the salary. Yeah, their focus is the salary. So I'm just trying to take into account the benefits as well. So if we were to hire these 12 positions, their intention is to cover 75%, the federal government in this grant solicitation, their intention is to cover 75% of the salaries, which is basically how that would work out based on our salary numbers. But then we would have to also take into account the benefits that we will have to pay these officers as well. And so that's kind of what I wanted to paint a big picture of.
And is the expectation that these positions
Mm-hmm.
be continued at the end of the 3-year grant period?
So the solicitation requires at least 12 months. And then I'm sure that the police department would want to keep these on from that point forward.
Are these new lines within the police department personnel budget, or
Yes,
it would be new lines?
they would be new lines.
Are these needed lines within the police department personnel budget?
We believe so. This would increase our sworn strength by 12 officer positions. So by solicitation language, we wouldn't be able to supplant. So we are budgeted for 369 officers. We don't have 369 officers, but that's our sworn strength. But we're requesting to increase our sworn strength to 381. And this would be a means of getting some help in funding in order to do that.
Are the responsibilities of these new officers what you would look for if this grant were not on the table and you were simply seeking to hire new officers?
I will let Major Nunez, Assistant Chief, kind of take that over, but I believe so.
Thank you, Commissioner McKiernan. Ray Nunez, Assistant Chief. Yes, to answer your question, absolutely. We would definitely want to first sustain 381 officers beyond the grant, and they would be able to help assist with lowering violent crime.
So as I understand it, these officers that would be grant funded have a little bit more of a focused mission in terms of police department, in that they would be kind of like a special case or a hard case type unit that would focus more on violent crime specifically.
Yes, specifically. They would definitely focus on violent crime. Think of it more as a quick reaction force to real-time crime that is occurring. And we would have officers readily available that are not on calls for service, and that they would react quicker.
It strikes me that this is a request that I think we hear quite a bit from our constituents, to have a group of dedicated officers like this, specifically looking at violent crime. And with that as background, I would just share with anyone from the public who is watching this that it is expensive for us to meet a need that they desire very greatly. These are needed officers. I think they would be busy. I think they would make a positive impact on our city. But we all have to realize that that does come with an expense that we must be willing to bear if we want to get the benefit of their work.
Yes, sir. And the police department agrees.
So I just want to clarify. So best case scenario, how much money are we spending just for the benefits if we get the waiver? And then worst case scenario is the 2 million.
Yes. So best case scenario is that we are 100% funding these officers at $3.5 million.
And
So that's my estimate. That's what I would be applying for with a full match waiver. And that would cover all of the salary and all of the benefits. Both components are going into our grant application, and we will be requesting a 100% match waiver.
Okay. Commissioner Ramirez and then Kate.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. So what is our full strength? What's the number for full strength?
369,
369. And what are we at now?
329.
329. Okay. I was just curious of those numbers, so thank you.
Commissioner Kane. Additional questions from the commission? Clerk, any comments from the public and or anyone here present who would like to speak?
No comments were received.
All right. A motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman,
Aye.
Kane, McKiernan,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Great. Okay. Sorry, we're having a sidebar over here. Thanks, team. All right, that brings us to item number 6.
Commissioner Markley, can we verify who seconded the motion?
Oh, did no one second? Okay, sorry, that was me. Would anyone like to second the motion?
Second.
Do we need to roll call again, or can we just?
No, we don't need a roll call again.
Okay, sorry guys, that was me. Okay. Next up, we have an overview of the fishing program and budget, and Angel Obert is here to discuss.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. Thank you for your time tonight. We'll try to make this quick. So I'm Angel Obert, Director for Parks and Recreation, and with me is our Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation, Jack Webb. No worries. So tonight we have a short presentation of our fishing program. So we just kind of want to bring some information to you tonight, just of some things that we have been noticing in the past 5 years as far as trends go, and then also some things we are anticipating in the coming years as far as budget impacts and how that'll affect our fishing program. As you know, we do have 3 lakes under our purview. We have Wyandotte County Lake, Pearson Park Lake, and Big 11 Lake. Also, as many of you know, we have a very robust fishing program in our community that is used by a lot of our citizens. One second, I think we're still waiting on this to come up. I think that bottom presentation button, we'll pull it up. Oh, there you go, thanks. And let's see here. So on this first slide we have here, so we pulled some data and some numbers from the past 5 years, starting in 2018 through 2022. And so we wanted to kind of walk you through what the budget has looked like for the fishing program starting in 2018. So you'll see in 2018, we had allocated $85,836 to the fishing program for our 3 lakes. And then so in 2019, we did see a little bit of an increase, and the way that we were able to get that increase was we did have some savings at the end of the year that we moved over to support this program. Also in 2019, we had 3 extra fishing derbies that the Parks and Recreation Department supported for the community, 3 other community groups. In 2020 and 2021, you see those budget numbers go back to on average that 87,000 for that program. And then also in 2022, you see that budget come back up by $6,805. And the reason for that increase is in 2021, we started to notice some trends as far as the cost of fishing supplies and what it takes to stock our 3 lakes. So we were able to adjust the budget just a little bit in 2021 to 2022. So this next slide here, we will take you through the permits sold. So in 2018, we sold 75,880 fishing permits. That was pretty standard in the years leading up to 2018. So in 2019, we saw a significant jump in permits sold. Wait 1 second. In 2019, we saw a significant increase in permits sold, and that increase included an additional 8,575 permits that were sold. In 2019, as many of you can probably remember, we experienced a lot of rain that year. A lot of the surrounding lakes were closed due to flooding. So in 2019 in particular, we had a lot of community members, especially across the metro, come to Wyandotte County Lake to use our lake. So that is where we started noticing more that this trend of our fishing permits were increasing in sales. In 2020, again, we saw an increase. That increase was roughly 11,035 permits sold. I'm sure many of you have heard me say this before, but the pandemic highlighted just how important Parks and Recreation services were to our community, not just in Wyandotte County, but also across the nation. So in 2020, that's why we saw, we believe that is why we saw a significant increase in permits sold as well. Again, in 2021, that number stayed pretty high again at 92,140 permits sold. So just a decrease of about 3,350 between 2020 and 2021. I also want to note that prior to the implementation of Civic Rec in 2020, the Parks and Recreation Department, we didn't track permits, permits sold, which were the resident permits versus non-residents. It was just not something we were tracking in the old software. We were just entering permits as they came in and not differentiating between the two. I do want to just provide some data very quickly because since we have the new Civic Rec software, we've been able to track and do a lot more with that. So in 2021, we do have an entire year's first cycle of data. So in 2021, we sold 3,499 resident permits, fishing permits. We sold 918 non-resident fishing permits. We sold 153 resident day passes, and we sold 164 non-resident day passes of fishing permits. Also, our total revenue and permits sold in 2021 was just a little over $111,000. So on this next slide, I just want to kind of do a high-level overview of the pounds of fish purchased per year and how we strategize and what our process is when we stock our lakes every year. So we have 4 types of fish that we stock our lakes with. We have catfish, trout, crappie, and walleye. And then so you can see the trend there from 2018 to 2022 on the pounds of fish or pounds purchased per fish per year. So something I just want to highlight. So catfish in particular, we've seen a 17.4% increase in price between 2018 and 2022. And then so also during that same time frame, our budget has only increased 9.5%. And a good example that I want to point out on this slide in particular, so if you look at catfish in 2021, we purchased 15,901 pounds. And then so this year, having completed our catfish stocking and purchase, we purchased 15,873 pounds. And as you remember me saying, we did have a slight increase in the budget, just about $6,000 from 2021 to 2022. And we are still received less catfish for that. So what we are noticing is the resources to stock our lakes is also increasing, which is, you know, not uncommon right now in the economy. So on this last slide, we just want to wrap it up too on what what to expect when you do see our budget request. So we are anticipating this trend to increase as far as price per fish, pound per fish to increase. So we will be proposing a budget request for 2023 for $114,000. That is $20,000 more, a 21% increase for this particular program from the 2022 budget allocation of $94,000. And then from 2023 on out, we will continue to do a small incremental increase per year of $5,000 to sustain what we believe the market rates will continue to be as we anticipate them to increase. And so with that being said, it's a good problem to have because that just, shows us that our community is out and they're utilizing their resources more. We know this is a big fishing community and they're out there enjoying our lakes. So we definitely want to make sure that our lakes don't get overfished and we want to continue to stock them adequately for our community. Happy to take any questions that you might have with that.
I must say, I've been on this committee for 12 years now, and I don't think I've ever heard the fish report. This is the first time, I think, so appreciate it. Mr. Kane.
Well, maybe somebody asked for a report. How much money sales wise, if you add up all the fishing licenses, did we bring in?
So for 2021, the revenue received for permits sold for all of them, resident, non-resident, the day passes, is just a little bit over $111,000.
And the reason I say that is the lake is getting overfished. I'm out there every weekend. I see it every single weekend. We saw it during trout season. I mean, the lake's getting pounded. So I actually think that asking for 114 isn't enough. And it's great to see the community out there, not just the Wyandotte Lake, but all 3 lakes. And I would think that you'd be asking for 120 to 125 now, just so the lake won't be overfished. And it's pretty neat when you cruise the lake and you see all those kids, if they're not fishing, they're at the playgrounds, they're having picnics, all day picnics, as a matter of fact. So I think it's something that we need to consider to up what they're asking for. And it's not, and in my mind, another $10,000 isn't that much because we have that many people using the lake. And I wish that we would go around and take pictures of how many people are using it because they have a hard time parking in some of the areas. So I never saw it until the last couple of years. I haven't been out there until the last couple of years, really. But what you guys have done with the parks, keeping it clean and then the trash picked up and all the stuff that goes along with that. But I do believe they need more money to provide more fish for the people that are out there, for the amount of people that are out there.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you. I certainly endorse and support increasing the amount of money that we use for maintaining this aspect of a few of our park facilities. So I hope you're going to build this into your budget request for the 2023 budget. I agree with Commissioner Kane. I think you ought to build in more than this because certainly I think that the need is there and the payoff is there. I'll go back to something I said a couple of meetings ago. I think we certainly took some funding from supporting our parks and our parks department back at the time of the housing downturn. And I don't think that we have adequately put that money back into the budget to support our parks personnel, and the public amenities that we want to have for our constituents. And I think we as a commission need to buckle down and explore ways to restore funding for supporting our parks because that supports our citizens.
I got Ramirez and then Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. 1000% second what Commissioner McKiernan said. We all know I'm a Parks and Rec fan, hardcore Parks and Rec fan. I completely agree with Commissioner Kane. Please bring this budget, bring more, bring more to the table, request for more. Because it is something that is widely used and enjoyed. As you said, Angel, in your presentation, 2020, our parks, not just Wyandotte County and not just our lakes, but all our parks around the city and county were used during COVID the most, that, in my opinion, that had been used in a long time in that type of way. And I completely agree that I think every year we need to make a concerted effort of increasing parks budget all around. You guys do amazing job, amazing work in the community. As I keep saying, we can have all the housing and all the development we want, but unless we don't have amenities to go with it, no one's going to want to live here. No one's going to want to build a business here. And so I completely agree with this, and I agree that you need to request more for this item. And I think with Commissioner McKiernan, and us go moving forward, I think every year we expect Parks and Rec to continue to ask for more year after this, not just for our fishing program, but for all for other parts of the budget and programming, because you guys do amazing work, and so I thank you for all that you do. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Commissioner McKiernan. I'm McKiernan. Commissioner Markley, that's what I said, Commissioner Markley. First of all, I do agree, and Angel, you already know, I'm going to be definitely leaning in on your behalf and on behalf of the Parks Department in the coming days and months, particularly for those that are east of 635. And so we will continue to have those conversations. As it relates to park, I think, or to lakes and fishing, I'm not a fisherman, but I don't see as many persons down at Big 11 Lake. And I think part of that might be the issue with regard to the algae. And I'm not sure if that's relative to this year. I know it has been the case in prior years. So can you speak to where we are with regard to that? And then also, are we supplying all 4 types of fish to Big 11 Lake, or are we just talking about one type?
Sure.
Take that. Jack Webb, Deputy Director of Parks and Rec. KDHE has lifted the algae warning on Big 11. The algae that it had comes with the heat. As you know, Big 11 is not fed by any watershed, by creeks. So that's why that water heats up the way it does. They will continue testing, but right now it's been removed.
Okay, but we haven't seen the extent of heat yet, so there's still a possibility.
Right. Yeah, anything's possible.
Yeah.
As far as the fish, we just stock catfish at Big 11, but a lot of people puts fish in Big 11 for us. So that lake does have a fish kill about every 6 or 7 years. For some reason, the oxygen depletes, and you'll be astonished the different kinds of species of fish that are in that lake.
Really?
But we do stock that 3 times a year with a small truck that comes in. We can only add 400 pounds of catfish at a time because of the size of the lake.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the commission? Or clerk, do we have any comments from the public?
None were received.
This item was for information only, so if there are no further questions, we will let Angel go free.
Thanks. I just want to say thanks for your time tonight, commissioners. And I only wish I came asking for some money, because it sounds like you would have been in our favor tonight. So thank you. We'll be back.
All right. If you're following along in the agenda, you'll remember we moved items 7 and 8 to items number 1 and 2, which means now we are ready for our last item on this Public Works and Safety Standing Committee agenda, which is a public appearance by Martin Cunningham requesting to discontinue herbicide spraying at Rosedale Park. Mr. Cunningham, please state your name and your city of residence for the record, and you'll be given up to 3 minutes to make your comments. Welcome.
Martin Cunningham, I live in Rosedale. The issue I bring in front of the committee deals with safety and health equity. There's not
Hold that microphone just a little, just up a little if you can. Yeah.
There. Okay. So the issue I bring in front of the committee is one that deals with safety and health equity. Let me get this right. It's much too complicated to do it justice in 3 minutes. So what I'm asking this time is for the committee to accept a yet as to be written evaluation of risks and benefits of spraying the county properties, in particular the parks, which we just heard about, with a mixture of cosmetic toxic pesticides on all the turf land we have. The authors of that evaluation would include the chief and the deputy health officer of our own Wyandotte County Health Department and other highly qualified individuals. And I ask that that particular evaluation become the basis of recommendation to the full commission on whether to halt or continue application of herbicides, which are designed in this particular case to kill the dandelions and the clovers, which in reality have a pretty detrimental effect on our most valuable population and a lot of the animals. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So this report you mentioned, has it been given to the clerk?
No, it hasn't. No, we haven't discussed it yet, actually.
Okay. That's what
So what I would ask too is that you give us permission to submit it to the committee and have that be the basis of the recommendation, whether to put it in front of the full commission.
Okay, I misunderstood. I was thinking there was something written, but
Yeah, not yet.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. I mean, I would support that. I know you're not the first. No, I am your commissioner, and you're not the first Rosedalian that has come to me about that issue, especially the Rosedalians that are on the trails. They have mentioned that, so I would be completely open to hearing more about it. And of course, it's up to Commissioner Bynum, who's the chair of the committee, but I'm sure she would be open to it as well to hear the report and to get more information.
You have 500 signatures from people who agree with us, incidentally, on a signature gathering application.
So I was just going to say, what I think I hear is Commissioner Ramirez is going to follow up with Commissioner Bynum and staff.
I heard that.
And of those 500 signatures, are the majority of them from Rosedale and surrounding areas?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
There are a few from Liechtenstein and a few from Germany too.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you.
All right, with that, team, we have made it to the end of meeting number 1, and we will adjourn our Public Works and Safety Standing Committee meeting. Do we need a minute, or do we just want to forge ahead? All right, hold on. Let me get my other agenda. Thank you, Mr. Groneman.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to start my obligatory statement. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to announce that some committee members, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During this meeting, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of this meeting. The public may also indicate their intent to provide remote public comment by contacting the clerk's office by 5 p.m. the Thursday before the meeting. The public also will have an opportunity to provide brief comments either by telephone or via Zoom from the lobby of the municipal office building. I'm going to have that memorized here pretty soon. I will now call this meeting of the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Kane. Johnson.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Markley.
Here, there's one change to the agenda this evening, and this is the update from the municipal court will be continued to our June meeting. So we won't hear that update here tonight. We'll hear it on June 27th, I believe is the evening. Our first order of business is the approval of minutes from our January 24th meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Kane. Johnson.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
The vote
item-
is
Go ahead.
5-0.
Our item number 1 is an ordinance amending section 27-593 for telecommunication towers on stadium light poles in residential zones, and Gunnar Hand is here to speak with us.
Thank you, Madam. Whoa. Everybody calm down. Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Before you tonight, you have a very small, quick edit to Chapter 27 proposed. It's related to the wireless telecommunications facilities ordinance, which is within our special use permit section. It's one modification under stealth tower in residential domes, effectively allowing in the future such stealth towers to happen on light poles, for instance, or other athletic facilities that already are within or below 199 feet.
So these are on existing, it would allow telecommunications stuff on already existing stuff.
It would allow it to go through the process where it was previously prohibited. So it would still need a special use permit. There would still be oversight of these, but it would relate to all the codes thereby allowed. Again, this is only for stealth towers between 80 and 199 feet. That's the only change.
Okay, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Thank you, Gunnar, for bringing this forward. And please excuse me, you may have already answered this before. But why the change?
Just two primary reasons. One, when we started digging into the wireless telecommunications facility on Unicode, we found out that they had an error and they had not adopted or put down our code since 2016 amendment. That's a technical error. So we were able to uncover that and get that posted. That didn't mean we had to change anything. It didn't mean anything that we had done since 2016 had changed, but we were able to update all of it as a part of this process, not necessarily this action of this body. So that was important that we found that. The second thing that I would add, and most staff uses Unicode as opposed to Encode to look at all the zoning codes. So that's one side of it. All the public does as well. The second thing is we had a specific request from the Archdiocese to allow this. There's a similar type stealth facility at the Wyandotte County High School. Wyandotte High School. And that happened before this code went into effect in the early aughts, 2003, I believe it was. Then we had this 2008 change to the wireless telecommunication facility, and then we had the update in 2016. So the update in 2018 and 2016 prohibited those types of facilities. Bishop Ward and the Archdiocese would like to do a similar facility in their practice fields and game facilities in the Cathedral neighborhood.
Okay. I think I understood.
They're basically gonna get brand new lights for the Bishop Ward facility. And while they're doing that, they'd like to co-locate a stealth tower on one of them.
Okay. So what is, excuse ignorance, I'm not very well versed in communications. What is co-locate?
Co-locate means they're basically going to stick antenna on top of a big light pole.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I briefly did that for a living, co-location agreement at Windstream. Anyone else have questions on this item? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve, Johnson.
Ramirez, second.
I do have a motion and a second this time. I'll take roll call.
Roll call, Kane. Johnson.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
The vote is 5-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 2, is an ordinance adding section 22-44 to the Code of Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, establishing a prohibition on conversion therapy of minors. Commissioner Ramirez and James Bain are here to present.
Commissioners, this is the same ordinance you heard in January or February regarding conversion therapy. The short highlights are it bans conversion therapy conducted by professionals, licensed psychiatrists, licensed counselors performed on minors are kind of the two bullet points: the professional licensee and being performed on minors.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Mark. Thank you, James. And also, I'd just like to also highlight and additional information. It does not bar, prohibit, or hinder any healthcare provider to provide any necessary medical or mental health care to a person who may be to an LGBTQ plus youth who may be questioning, who has gender dysphoria. This does not hinder that in any way, shape, or form. That healthcare provider may provide the affirmation, the exploration, the guidance, and the counseling that they may need to help them go through what they're going through. What this ordinance does is it just specifically talks about the interventions that work to change a person's sexual orientation or gender expression. When I gave the presentation in January, it is not a scientifically valid form of therapy or of any type of scientific medical. It has no validity. Every major health organization in the United States has spoken out against it, and that it causes more harm than good. And so, and I know a few commissioners have had asked the question, well, does conversion therapy happen in Wyandotte County? I'm not sure, but my thing is to be retroactive and to ensure that our community is open and safe for everybody. KCMO, the cities within the metro that have this are Kansas City, Missouri, North Kansas City, Independence, Prairie Village, Roland Park, and Lawrence, Kansas has the same ordinance in place. So we are not the only ones. We wouldn't be the quote unquote black sheep of the metro with this type of ordinance. And so I hope that this is something that the committee passes before in January, and it passed unanimously. So I hope that we see that this can move forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Kane?
Well, I'm the one that asked to come back so I could educate myself, and it sounds like it would be terrible to have that done to your kid. But the people I talked to said it's a solution looking for a problem. And I actually got an email from a constituent just a little while ago, saying it's their kids. So, I mean, I understand a portion of what you're saying, but I don't know anywhere in Wyandotte County that you're right. And there's two sides. There's 6 sides to this story, but I'm just not comfortable with it.
Any other comments from the commission? Clerk, do we receive any comments from the public?
None were received.
Is there anyone online or here present to speak on this item from the public?
There were none.
No?
No,
Okay.
there were none.
All right. This is a voting item. If there are no additional comments or questions, we would need a motion and a second to move forward.
Commissioner Ramirez, vote to approve. Move to.
I'm hearing none. Is there no interest in this moving to the full commission for discussion? Commissioner McKiernan?
So Commissioner Ramirez, every time I think I understand something, I realize I don't. So help me understand how the passage of this ban would materially impact lives in a positive way. That's a really roundabout way of putting it. But tell me how this ban would make a positive difference.
It would make a positive difference because it's, me being the only member of the LGBT group that serves on this board, as far as I know, being who we are, is already hard enough, of the shame and the guilt of what it comes along with it. And conversion therapy amplifies that. They use a lot of psychological and physical stimuli to associate that stimuli with your sexual orientation. And that just creates more of the guilt, the more of who we are is wrong. And that's where it could make a difference. They're knowing that their local government, their local community supports them and won't support a practice that furthers that shame and that guilt of who they are.
So who is it generally who seeks this therapy?
It is mainly minors, and it's not, and at that point it's them below 18.
So do the minors seek the therapy, or are the minors the subject of the therapy, and is it sought by parents?
It is minors subject to the therapy.
Okay. By a parent or another adult.
Yes. And I completely understand, parents, it's their choice, it's their child. But I just have reservations with that because it's been studied that children, youth, minors, LGBT minors who go through conversion therapy are 2 times more likely to have the ideation of suicide or to attempt suicide compared to a non-LGBT youth. They have higher levels of depression, anxiety, and guilt, and they will, majority of the time and there's been many reports and studies, they will practice self-destructive behavior because of the psychological warfare, you could say, that is happening within their head. They're wanting to follow what they know they are, but they have someone else in their mind telling them that's not who they are. And they create stimuli, psychological and physical, to connect that quote unquote bad side, and that you need to change from homosexuality to heterosexuality.
I want to make it clear, I do not believe that this sort of therapy should be provided. I personally don't see a benefit in the provision of it. But is it our place as a local government to tell a parent or other legal guardian what they can and cannot do within their family? And that's, I'm not asking that as an argumentative question. I'm just wondering out loud, what is our role in dictating at the guardian or family level?
And I would agree with you on that. But at the same time, I think there comes a line when the child's health and safety, it comes into play. It's the same thing for child in need of cases children who are abused. Local governments, or state governments for that matter, dictate to how a parent should reprimand their children. But it comes to a point when the health and safety of the child comes into play, where I say there's a little leeway in that. Yeah. Because it's like, yes, you, based on religion or what have you, you may do what you want with your children, but if it's detrimental to your child's health and safety, where they're having ideation of suicide where else they might not have, or they're having increased signs of depression and anxiety and guilt, then I think that opens the door for a local community to say, we need to help and protect the children. Even though I know it's parents' choice, but I'm looking at the health and safety of the child first, of the minor.
I appreciate the conversation and very much appreciate allowing me to learn more about this.
Of course.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do I hear a second? All right. Item will be tabled, and that will bring us to item number 3 on our agenda, the draft remote worker policy. And Human Resources is here to present. I see Shakiva approaching. Yes, yeah.
There we
Around
go. Thank you. Shakiva Christian, Human Resources Manager, here to present a draft of the remote work policy. If you will recall, we have presented to you before a remote work policy that was approved, but we have brought it back for clarification on a few items that we wanted to spell out for you today. We are clarifying the expectations of the employees and service delivery, addressing those more clearly in the policy this time. But we also want to keep in mind the workforce and ensure that we are still valuing our employees to provide a workplace that is flexible and recognizes recognizes work-life balance. Just to go over the definitions, the remote work policy a remote work is a type of flexible working arrangement that allows an employee to work from an alternative work location outside of the traditional work environment. We also just want to point out this policy in no way modifies the residency policy. So although we would have employees working remotely, of course, they would still have to maintain their residence in Wyandotte County. We also conducted Unified Government Human Resources, as well as the legal department, did conduct research from other entities that have remote work policies. We looked at the city of Kansas City, Missouri, Douglas County, Johnson County, Topeka, it was Shawnee County, Sedgwick County, County of Santa Clara, City of Kent, Washington, and Thurston County, Washington. All of them, we also looked at whether they had policies pre-COVID or post-COVID. Most of those entities established their policies post-COVID and have maintained those policies since COVID. In terms of number of days per week, most allow anywhere from 1 to 5 days per week. I know that's difficult to read. It's difficult for me to read. Overview of the policy is that the employer does have the discretion to agree or to determine if an employee can work remotely. It is not available for all classifications. So we will look at which classifications will be most appropriate. The departments will submit a plan to the county administrator prior to approval of the remote work agreement. And then remote work agreement forms will be submitted to Human Resources once the signatures are obtained. As far as the remote work agreement in and of itself, the content of it is still in draft form, but we will have most of the expectations that are spelled out in the policy that will be a part of that remote work agreement, and then a space for the department to have their specific expectations in that policy or in that agreement. Okay, so there will be 3 types of remote work arrangements: regular remote work, episodic, and emergency proclamation. Regular remote work is basically a set number of days per week where employees would be able to work from home. We were looking at 2 days per week. I will say that there was some employee sessions that happened this afternoon, and we did receive feedback that employees would like more days allowed in that remote work policy. So we have decided to add some language that says that the department head and the county administrator could have the discretion to offer more, or look at case by case if they could determine if more is available based on that employee's situation. But those are set days per week. There is episodic remote work. This is just for instances whereas an employee could have special projects that they're working on. Certain life events would potentially allow an employee to work from home, but they must have an approved remote work agreement. Life events could be things such as family member illness, and again, like certain projects. We feel that this type of situation is better or helps with productivity. There may be instances where an employee may totally be absent from work, caring for a family member, but in working remotely, they still would have some productivity and those life events occur. Also, emergency proclamation would be those official emergency proclamations that would occur. It would allow the unified government to have the continuity of operations. Things such as facilities are shut down based on power outages, AC outages, and things of that nature that would allow us to continue to work if necessary. So the next thing we want to look at is appropriateness for remote work. Some of the things that we wanted to clarify. Feels like I'm going in and out. Department heads would look at whether face-to-face communications are infrequent, and they may be able to work from home if that is the case. We want to look at whether the work activities do not require confidential access to certain systems. There's systems such as Regis, KCGIS, and some other law enforcement types of systems that may not allow a remote work situation. We also want to make sure that it does not impede the accomplishment of the employee's performance or the department's work. Excuse me. And then also that customer service is not, or service delivery is not adversely impacted by working from home. So these are not all the circumstances that need to be reviewed, but they're just kind of a general guide that we want to make sure supervisors and departments are looking at and determining what is best when deciding who can work from home. Those individual characteristics are based on the type of position. The next requirements are based on the employee themselves. So employee eligibility requirements are that they have to have satisfactory performance and complete their probationary periods. They cannot be in a performance improvement plan. The employee is not designated as an excessive sick leave user. They must also not have had discipline or a serious documented performance issue or conduct deficiency within the last or preceding 12 months. And then supervisors who supervise those individuals that are not eligible for remote work would not be eligible to maintain a remote work situation. Okay. So once we decide who's eligible, which positions are eligible, which employees are eligible, there will be requirements of each employee. They have to comply with all UG Human Resources Guide policies, all departmental rules, and any applicable memorandums of understanding or union contracts. They must adhere to the policy and the terms of the remote work agreement that they must sign prior to working from home. We also want to make sure there's no virtual meetings that are taking place. I'm sorry, no in-person meetings taking place. Definitely virtual meetings. In-person meetings should not take place at an employee's home or supervisor's home. And we do that just for liability reasons. Employees must ensure that that personal disruptions are kept to a minimum. And then also we want no other gainful employment while working from home. Okay, other requirements of employees while working remotely, they are expected to be productive and available throughout their scheduled workday. So that would mean they have to answer their phone calls or their telephones or return voicemails as soon as possible while working remotely. They do have to maintain their Outlook calendars, make sure they're up to date and showing their status. Technology can allow supervisors to view the employee's calendar so they'll know if they're in the meeting, things of that nature. And they would be also expected to return to the office or regular work site if necessary. So if there's a case where, they're working remotely and something has come up in the office, they could be required to come in. And then no mileage or parking will be reimbursed while an employee is working remotely. Expenses, hardware, and software and supplies. The department shall provide the equipment, and the cost of expenses approved by the department they'll be basically borne by the unified government or that department. The employee must provide their functioning internet services, and there would be no reimbursement by unified government. Employee must adhere to all of the department directives and the responsible use of IT. And we also want to make sure that the employees are not the employees are aware that anything that's stored on their personal device that is UG business could be subject to disclosure based on disclosure requirements that we have. And then also employees are prohibited from allowing non-UG employees to utilize their UG equipment. Okay, workers' compensation and liability. Essentially, we still would have workers' compensation and liability policies that still apply to those working from home. If it happens to be a fire department employee, they do have their own IOD, but it does have to be a bona fide work-related injury. And if we have cases of that nature, we of course would have to evaluate those and determine if it is a bona fide work-related injury. Employees will still be required to report those injuries to their supervisor as soon as possible, which is the standard practice for our regular work comp claims. Employees would be responsible for replacing their UG equipment that they're assigned to should they damage it beyond normal wear and tear. And just so you know that we still would adhere to the Americans with Disabilities Act. If we need to make a reasonable accommodation for working from home, we will review those cases and the merits of those cases and making those accommodations for employees to work from home for ADA reasons. Okay, hours of work. Employees may request that at any time that their remote work agreement be modified, and the same thing for the employer. We could at any time modify or change or terminate the remote work agreement. The department may reassess the employee's eligibility for continued remote work at any time as well. All of the work schedules must comply with FLSA and the UG policies concerning FLSA. I know when employees are working from home, they may have the tendency to log in maybe offsite or after hours. We still are bound by the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act and paying that employee overtime if they do that. But we do want the employees to have pre-authorization to work overtime or compensatory time in doing that. And then also finally, employees may not engage in remote in lieu of taking paid leave. Examples would include leave for sick leave, FMLA, and vacation leave. So if we, provided that this policy passed today, we do have a projected timeline to hope to go to a full commission on the 9th. We would then, if approved at that point, have trainings for directors the week of June 17th. We would hope to do a few Zoom calls to kind of spread it out a little bit more to more supervisors to inform them of the policies and making sure that everyone's on the same page. We would then after that point, have the departments develop their plans and submit to county administration with a hopeful effective date of July 1st. And that's all I have. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Will probably come as no surprise to anyone that I'm a big supporter of this work from home policy. I think it is necessary for us to compete in the market. I think it's important to our employees and to letting them know how important their work was during COVID and how much we learned that we could accomplish with a work from home model. I'll tell you just briefly, anecdotally, I was on the drive over here and I was just thinking of my siblings and my cousins and our really close friend group. And pretty much without exception, at least one of the two adults in every one of those households works from home, out of all the cousins, all the siblings, and all those close friends. So I think that's just evidence of how prevalent it is in the private market. And because that's who we're in competition for employees, and because we know that competition is really stiff, I think it's really critical that we provide this benefit. Questions and comments from other commissioners? Commissioner Ramirez?
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Thank you to the HR for bringing this forward. It's come before us before, was passed, and yeah, was taken off without us knowing. What's the difference between what was presented before and what is being presented now? Because I'm going to be open and blunt and truthful. We still don't know for what reasons why the original draft was taken off the agenda. No information has ever been provided to us. So I'm curious as to what's different from before and now.
So largely we wanted to address that this policy would in no way impact the operations of the unified government. So we put more specific guidelines in there about their expectations that included some of the things such as making sure that they know that they have to answer their phones or return those phone calls as soon as possible. That's more specific in the policy now. The Outlook calendar, that type of thing is still in there. So we outline the expectations more clearly and more succinctly than previously. We also added some things with respect to ensuring that people are satisfactorily performing their jobs. They have no disciplinary action within the last year with respect to their performance or any other misconduct. So we just wanted to spell those out a little more clearly, that there are some guidelines, more specific guidelines that employees must follow to be able to work from home.
Okay. Trying to pick words carefully. I thank you for wanting to be, succinct and specific, but I feel we're going a little too overboard on saying what an employee can and cannot do.
Okay.
We're kind of dictating their every move of what they can do at home on remote work. When I know Commissioner Markley, we've had this conversation about the remote work. The best way to know that they're doing their job is if they're doing the work, if they provide the deliverable to the director and the supervisor. And so that's why I was in support of the first draft, because it gave the directors and administration and HR the flexibility to decide what was best for the particular employee of what their remote work should look like. This is making a cookie cutter plan for everybody.
Right.
And everyone's job isn't the same. And so that's my only concern, is that yes, it's very succinct and very explicit, but it's also very, in my mind, very restrictive on an employee. That's my opinion of it. I'm curious to hear what my fellow commissioners think, but this is what's being brought forward. Again, we weren't told on what specifics needed to be changed. So I am at the moment, don't know how is this on a vote? I don't know how I'm going to vote yet on this. But thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kane.
Well, I kind of agree with Commissioner Ramirez. We don't want to bind your employees, you know, and I think it works. My daughter-in-law does it every Monday and every Friday. You know, I think this is just start, you know, to get it where we wanted it to go in the first place. And I think this is going to be a moving target because they're going to have to make modifications to make it work for your systems. You know, because some will start at 7, some will start at 8. I mean, there's a whole bunch of variables. But our original intent was to allow staff to allow their employees as many as they could, or as many as they thought would work the best. Because I'm sure you're going to do a couple of things. You're going to bring some back in, and you're going to let some go back out because of the work table, whether it worked or whether it didn't work. So I want them to have the flexibility, and I also want us. Nobody got more mad than I did, you know, that this was pulled off and we weren't told about it. But I still think that we need to give them some sort of guidance to help their employees because they know what they need best. I don't know. You know, the ones that are going to be in person, they're going to be in person. But I actually talked to one of the departments head and said they get more out of 2 or 3 of their employees when they're at home than they do here because they're like me. They go to the water cooler to talk about the game. So I think it's important that we give them the flexibility, move this on. You'll probably have to make some modifications later on. So I guess that's an affirmative motion.
I'm hearing a motion from Commissioner Kane, but I do have Commissioner McKiernan up, and it looks like Johnson after with comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. You know, my wife worked from home 3 days a week, went on site 2 days a week for 20 years, maybe. And when COVID hit, she was at home 5 days a week. I think you can talk to her supervisor and she got her work done. She was productive at home. I think that same opportunity exists here. As Commissioner Markley said, I think we need to be adaptable. This is the way the workplace is changing. We need to get on board, or we run the risk of losing some employees who could otherwise do incredible work for our organization. I agree with Commissioner Ramirez. I think that each individual employee, supervisor, department, whatever, should be able to establish what constitutes acceptable job performance. And we should be able to find ways to track that job performance, that productivity, those deliverables. And so I don't think we should cut ourselves off from moving forward and making it work for the employees and ultimately for our constituents, for our residents, who we will deliver services to in an enhanced way. So, I mean, we have to remember, it's not just about us, it's about how we deliver services. And I think this could enhance service delivery. I do think, however, only UG equipment should be used at home. One of the things there said that that you couldn't store, you had to know that personal information was discoverable. I don't think there should be, I think a work device should be a work device. End of discussion.
I agree.
My opinion.
Yes. Yes, I agree with that. But I know that there are some instances where personal devices may be used for work. And I don't know if Misty can chime in on the discoverable, but yes.
Well, and it's not something we need to decide tonight, but I have a bias that it should be work equipment used for work purposes only. I mean, that's how my wife did it. Her computer came from her employer. She used it for only one thing, and that was her work. And then when she wanted to do other things, she had her other devices, which were personally owned. And I do think that especially these days, we really need to beef up and adhere to all of the DOTS requirements for connecting to all of our electronic resources so that we maximize the safety of our data and our employees. I thoroughly endorse moving in this direction.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. I'm going to tell you the truth, Ms. Christian. I don't know that I would want apply for work from home based off of what you just put before us. Because to me, this is not a flexible plan. This is a very inflexible plan in that for some reason, more language has been added to that which we received the first time. And so I feel that this is more limiting to our employees that want to be able to do that. And I'm just trying to look through here. And I don't know that I caught it, but it just says somewhere that they can only do this for like 2 weeks. Did I misunderstand?
It was 2 days per week.
They could not work remote no more than 2 days per week.
Up to 2 days per week, yes.
For all departments, no matter what. Right. So that to me is very inflexible.
Right. What we did add some language or looking at adding some language that there could potentially be some differing circumstances that would allow more than the 2 days per week. But that would have to have approval and review.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So we'll leave that as it is. We're comparison, or we're getting information that other cities have provided this. And the question that I have is, of those cities that you have looked at, mm-hmm. relative to what you're proposing tonight, are those cities as restrictive as what appears to be to me as put before us now?
So Kansas City, Missouri is one of the cities that does talk about their last performance review and no discipline within the last 12 months. They do have also, they have more days per week that they can offer. Like I mentioned, most of the entities that we surveyed allow up to 5 days per week, just depending on the department and the needs of that department. But yes, there are some entities that do provide some restrictive language regarding who's eligible.
Well, and regarding, performance, I couldn't agree more. I think that definitely needs to be part of that. And I assumed that was part of what we approved earlier. I don't know that. Am I wrong?
I think we're a little more explicit in the language now. It was more than that they just had to have satisfactory performance, but we didn't have the 12-month rule regarding discipline in there.
I guess what I'm saying is that when you add more language to any document, it makes it more challenging to meet the standard that is being established. And to me, the spirit of what's being proposed to us seems to be more restrictive. I have a problem with it because I was completely satisfied with what we approved to begin with. And I trust the confidence of 10 qualified members of this commission to know what is important. And to that end, that if we had problems, we would have one of us, 10, would have said something then, as opposed to approving this unanimously. I mean, we approved it unanimously is what I'm trying to get to. And I believe that if any of us 10 had a problem with it, we would have stated it last time. That's all for now.
Could I have something?
Please help.
No, I'm the attorney who deals with employment stuff at the unified government. So I either write these policies or I revise them or review them or whatever. I was not here the first time around. I had no involvement with the first draft. And I heard secondhand the circumstances that led to us having to come back here. I did review this policy and I did revise it. Some of the revisions, including the various eligibility requirements, were put in by HR. Those come from Kansas City, Missouri's policy. They are not just created out of whole cloth. I did put a few things in here that may sound restrictive, but really aren't intended to be. For example, that the employer can require a time log of somebody working from home. And I put that in there specifically because of an instance in the health department in which an employee did not feel that she should have to do that. And even though her supervisor wanted her to. And it just seems to me that when you've got somebody working from home, it's not unreasonable to want them to at least provide information about what they're doing during the course of the day. It's an option. It's not intended to be restrictive. It's just an option for supervisors who believe that that would be desirable. I think this is a workable policy. It's not perfect. The administrator did a survey of all the employees of the unified government, and there was quite a bit of feedback on this policy. The majority of employees approved of it, but there were some other comments that I thought were good. I think the administrator's intent is to come back and look at those and bring back changes. But at this point in time, we don't have anything in place. And I think the administrator feels this is workable, and I think it is workable. It may sound restrictive, but I don't think it is. It emanates initially from the department head, who is going to make a recommendation about remote work to the administrator. I assume that will be by job category. The administrator is going to look that plan over and approve it or not approve it. Once it's approved, then it's up to the department head to move forward and implement it. And the relationships between the supervisors and the employees will largely be dictated by who these employees are and by the demands of the job and by the natures of the supervisors. So, we'll see. I'm sure there will be changes down the line as experience dictates, but, based on what I've seen of other policies and on having looked through this one and worked on it a fair amount, it is not perfect. It is somewhat more restrictive. There are specific requirements to be able to work from home out of Kansas City, Missouri's policy, but overall, I think it is a workable policy. One thing that the administrator has asked to do is to on the 2 days a week requirement. There was quite a bit of comment by employees on that, understandably, trying to find something that would be workable. There are departments now, including I think 311, that alternate. They'll have a team there for a week on site, and then a team working remotely, and they'll switch off and switch off. And this policy needs to provide flexibility for that sort of arrangement. And so the administrator has asked to put in language that would allow the county administrator the discretion to approve a department plan that allows employees to work remotely more than 2 days a week if the county administrator determines that it would not adversely impact operations, customer service, and would be in the best interest of the department and the unified government. So it's a work in progress, but it's a start. And I think it's a basis for moving forward. So that's kind of where, as a reviewer and, having not been here initially, I'd be coming from.
Well, my assumption is that someone from legal looked at the document when it was first presented to us. Maybe it wasn't you.
It was
somebody.
It was not me.
And furthermore, I find it hard to believe that something was sent to us to consider that one that legal had not approved and or the county administrator not approved. Why would something come before us that was not known or understood before? And how is it now that there's more restrictions that everybody's okay with, but I don't understand that.
Commissioner, I believe HR thought that it would be better to have some requirements in the policy regarding eligibility as to who could and could not work remotely. And those they put in there, they drew them from the Kansas City, Missouri policy. The remainder of the policy is very much like the policy that you've got before. There are very few differences. I did mention the one about supervisors being able to do a log, but in my opinion, it's very, very similar to the policy you had before.
Well, I guess I'll just conclude by saying I wish you would have been able to be here the first time.
I did too. Unfortunately, I was.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that.
And I understand your frustration. There are differing views, as you know, about this matter. Trying to get to a place where everybody can agree. on this, and then we can move forward and see how it works out in practice and modify it as necessary.
All right, I've got a couple of comments from other commissioners, but I'm going to cut myself in line because I'm going to say a little bit about what I think might be a good idea. I hear the concerns and I agree with all of them. You guys know that. But I'm also concerned that if we continue to push this off, our employees are still waiting for their opportunity to work from home. What I'd love to see personally is us approve this policy with the added language that gives supervisors flexibility on the number of days. And then I'd like for human resources to commit to coming back to us, and you guys can sort of name the timeline based on your rollout timeline to report on how many requests were made and how many were accepted, because I think that will give this committee a good idea of whether we feel like we're being flexible enough or whether we got 200 applications and we turned down, half of them. So I think that would give us a good sort of feel for whether we were getting the flexibility that we wanted out of this policy or not. So that's my recommendation. I will now turn it over to Commissioner Kane.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. So is you, just so I'm clear on what your request is it not to roll out the policy, but to go ahead and accept?
To go ahead and roll it out, but then after we started to implement it and we have all the applications in and we have people working remotely, I'd like you to report back to us how many applications did we get and how many did we accept and how many did we turn down? Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Kane. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Markley. I think unfortunately at this point, we just have to swallow the pill that's been given to us. It's something that happens often around here. Sorry, I've been long here enough. I'm open and blunt now. As a member of the policymaking body, I make the request that HR does come back with revisions to the policy to give after it's been implemented for a period of time, reporting back to us, but a request from a member of the policymaking body that you come back with revisions to hopefully make it less restrictive and more adaptable to the director and to the department that would like a remote work agreement. That doesn't have to be part of the motion. It doesn't have to be at all. It's just a request from me to HR. Thank you.
All right. I long ago had a motion from Commissioner Kane. He may need to make updates to that motion if he is in agreement. And then I will need a second to that motion.
I'll second it.
And then I will need, any comments from the public or clerk, anything received, or anybody here in person or on Zoom?
There were no comments received.
All right, roll call on the motion.
Roll call. Kane. Johnson.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you
Motion's
very
5
much.
to 0.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to item number 4, a presentation on the draft 2002 to 2026. I think it's supposed to be 2022 to 2026. A consolidated plan and analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. And I have Wilma Miller and Stephanie Stauffer here from Community Development to present. Welcome and thank you for your patience this evening.
Good evening, commissioners. It's kind of nice to be here in person. This is totally different. As you said, it is time for our 2022 to 2026 5-year plan. I am going to turn it over to Stephanie Stauffer. She is the program coordinator that has been working with our consultant and doing the grants management portion. So I'll just let her go. And there's a couple times when I'll probably just interrupt and say something.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Stauffer, like Wilma said, and I'm with Community Development. And I'm going to just go through the Consolidated Plan and Analysis of Impediments to Fair Housing Choice, or the AI. That's kind of a lot. They are 300 pages together, so I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, but it is a lot of information. So each of these planning processes are required for us to receive our grants from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And so that is Community Development Block Grants, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Emergency Solution Grants. And so we have the 5-year Consolidated Plan, which outlines our needs assessments related to housing and community needs, outlines our priorities for the use of these HUD grants, and also our 5-year goals and our first year plan to start accomplishing those goals. The Analysis of Impediments, or the AI, explores whether everyone has a similar choice for housing, regardless of their race, ethnicity, national origin, sex, religion, disability, or whether they have children. And we've been working with a consultant called Mosaic Community Planning in the process. So in the month of March, we did a community engagement process where we had a survey that went out. We had 142 community survey participants. We did stakeholder interviews with 30 organizations. We had 4 community workshops with 24 participants, and those workshops were held in English with Spanish translation. And then we also had 2 targeted resident focus groups. And so with all that community engagement, we got a lot of feedback on what the community thought our community needs are. So with housing needs, there were help for homeowners to make home improvements, rehab of affordable rental housing or apartments, energy efficiency improvements, public service needs. The top ones were health and mental health services, childcare, substance abuse or crime prevention, and youth services or programs. For homeless needs, we had transitional permanent supportive housing programs, homelessness prevention, supportive services, and case management. For public facilities, folks were really worried about community centers, homeless centers, and community parks, gyms, and rec fields. For public infrastructure, I think we know from the survey that folks are really concerned about streets and road improvements and sidewalk improvement and expansion. And then economic development needs, the one that rose to the top was redevelopment or demolition of blighted commercial properties. The second part of the plan is the needs assessment. So that is us going through a pretty deep dive into all the local regional plans, available data. We look at housing affordability, the housing market, what our needs and gaps are for public services and public facilities. Some of those data sources are like the census. We look at data from the appraiser's office. We look at data from MARC. We pulled all the UG area master plans and plans from other UG departments like parks. And then we also pulled data from the Coalition and Homelessness in Greater Kansas City. After we looked through all that data, we came up with these priority needs and 5-year goals. So those are improve housing access and quality, provide housing and services for people experiencing or at risk of homelessness, provide other public services for low to moderate income households, improve public facilities and infrastructure, support economic development, and also planning and administration. And so here is our 2020 funding for the annual action plan for 2022. You can see here that unfortunately, CDBG took a hit this year. So we're looking at about a difference of 7.3%. Home had an 8% increase and ESG had less than 1% decrease. The negative change you're seeing in CDBG is in relation to the addition of community development earmarks that went into the federal budget. And so HUD made up that difference by taking back from CDBG. But Kansas City, Kansas was awarded some earmark projects. So I think at the end of the day, we probably came out on top. Okay, and so here is just a summary of our projects. They're not really that much different from last year, with the exception of the area master plan activities, which are taking place of the NRSA activities. And so this is just a way to continue making those types of infrastructure improvements and public facility improvements like we did with City Park, but broadening it from the NRSA area to activities that were identified in some of the area master plans. This is home. So we're going to be continuing our work, working with CHODOs and subrecipients to develop new construction housing and rehab.
So this is where I want to interrupt. A lot of the commissioners will remember that we used to include a CHIP down payment assistance program. We haven't had a good application since we had to change our underwriting per HUD. The last one was in 2019. So instead of just keep setting it aside, we like to recommend that we just use the money to do another affordable housing unit or a couple of affordable housing units, so that mainly that the home money would be used for people like CHWC, like Habitat, and other agencies that might come to us and want to do housing development. As you can see, $952,000 is not very much. And right now, when we allocate funds to our CHODOs and to our entitlements, we give them about $190,000 per unit. And so $952,000 is not going to go very far. But again, with commission's approval, I'd like to eliminate the down payment assistance. I know a lot of the surrounding communities have too.
All right, and then this is just our budget for ESG projects, which the great majority of the funding goes out to subrecipients to carry out projects in community organizations. And then we keep 7.5% to administer the grant. Okay, so that is kind of the consolidated plan, and then we'll move on to the AI. So as a participating jurisdiction, a jurisdiction that receives HUD funding, the unified government is required to affirmatively further fair housing. And so that's not necessarily just community development. That's the UG as an entity is required to do that. That means taking meaningful action to combat discrimination, overcome patterns of segregation, and then eliminate barriers that restrict opportunity for folks to have access to fair housing. So those protected classes are race, color, religion, sex, familial status, national origin, having a disability, or having a particular type of disability. And it's important to say that we don't receive any special funding to meet this requirement. It's just something that we're required to do. And so when we asked folks about fair housing, we asked, you know what your fair housing rights are? And only 50% of the community said yes, 34% said somewhat, and 15% said no. But when we asked, do you know where to file a fair housing complaint? 50% of folks said that they don't know where to file a complaint. And so I think we have identified that we have some work to do in educating folks on what their fair housing rights are. When we asked folks what the barriers to fair housing are, they said that they think that neighborhoods need revitalization and new investment. And then the next top three are related to affordable housing. We identified 6 impediments to fair housing choice, and each of these impediments in the plan have action items to go with them. The first one is low labor market engagement and limited incomes restrict housing choice and access to opportunity amongst protected classes. Number 2 is the continued need for neighborhood investment. Number 3 is housing options for persons with disability. Number 4, historical disinvestment in housing conditions disproportionately affects protected classes. Historical redlining and those kinds of things. The multifamily uses are severely restricted by both our policy and our implementation in the zoning code. And that lack of strong networks limit ongoing progress towards fair housing goals. And so that's kind of a summary of the AI. And then our next steps are to publish these proposed drafts of these plans. We're hoping to get those on the website by June 2nd. And then hold a community presentation at Livable Neighborhoods to let folks know a deeper dive into it. And then we'll accept comments online through July 5th, and then hold a public hearing on July 14th, and then make any of our necessary changes and hopefully have approval on July 28th. And then we have to get it into HUD by August 12th so we don't lose our funding.
And commissioners, normally we talk about the budget. We just got our budget numbers, a week ago. So we're having to take the budget that we did show you here and make sure that it's input into the budget department, and we will go along with the budget process. Normally we would be adopting everything at the same time, but like last year, the UG budget is going to be adopted later, much later than our submission date. So we want to get the plan into HUD, get it approved, and we will be coming forward for budget just like normal.
Thank you. Our I will say it's frustrating with that down payment program, but just in general with a lot of these programs that the red tape becomes so difficult that we can't provide the services we would like to our community. So, not something we control, but it's frustrating anyway. Commissioners, questions or comments? Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Couple of questions. I noticed that the administrative percentage changed from the CDBG projects to the home. CDBG is 20%, the other
It's only 10.
10%.
Mhm.
So that's not a standard a number then. correct?
Yes, it
What
is.
to dictate. Okay,
CDBG it only allows 20%, home only allows
so
10%.
those are requirements then.
Those are
Those are the
requirements.
statutory, yeah.
Yeah, statutory requirements. And ESG only allows 7.5%.
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't coming from us.
No.
The area master plan activities of $500,000. Now, I know when we identified the NRSA years ago, 5 years ago, I guess, boy,
Yes.
time has gone by so fast, right?
Yes.
There were others. We did it by census tract.
Yes, we did. We went into partnership with the Department of Planning and the KU College.
I
I'm
remember
sorry.
that. Yeah.
And they looked at 5 census tracts at the time because we had to specify to HUD why that particular census tract. And we had at that time the median one. And we feel like there was some success for like the parks in the NRSA area. We spent quite a bit of money in City Park, Reagan Field. We're working on Clifton Park now. But we didn't get to do the things that HUD had intended for us to do. A lot of it was because of COVID related. We did code enforcement. We did Rock the Block with Habitat for Humanity in Kansas City. But we didn't bring up the diploma rate, the rate for school kids. We didn't get to change the back taxes. There were a lot of things that we were not allowed to do during that period of time. So when we were headed in this new direction, we decided that there were master plans out there for several neighborhoods that we could start addressing that wouldn't have to meet the same kind of requirements that HUD put to us, because we can pay for physical infrastructure improvements. We can pay for some of the things without getting into that bind, so to speak. We had well intentions. We met with neighborhood residents many, many times, and we really wanted to accomplish something. And I think we did sort of stabilize the neighborhood. I think a lot of the people feel very special because their parks are looking better and all of that. But we're going to meet with the planning department and bring some ideas to you all about what it is we would like to address.
I can appreciate that. Of course, that was in District 4 and so I'm certainly appreciative. And I hope that the community at large in that area appreciates us as well. I'll be interested to see the new direction and hearing from the planning department. So with that, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Clerk, any comments from the public or anyone online or in person who'd like to comment?
Commissioner, there were none received.
All right, this is an item requiring a motion, I believe.
Motion to approve as submitted.
Need a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Kane. Johnson.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you so much, Wilbert and Stephanie. And that concludes our meeting. We are adjourned.
We have one.